American Comics. The Bad Professor, The Disbandment of the X-Men begins. Chapter 61. Ling Di became more and more curious about Charles, who is this powerful and knowledgeable mutant. In the beginning, when Charles used his ability to fix the bullets, she thought Charles was Eric Magneto. However, Magneto cannot destroy the sharp knife robot with one punch with physical strength. And Magneto does not have strong psychic power. Others thought that Charles had two mutant abilities, but Ling Di knew very well that he had at least three. Go inside the prison. Turner, the head of Louisiana's Sentinel Security Company, did not flee. Behind him stood dozens of mercenaries, as well as the only 5 sharp-knifed robots left. I didn't expect you to break in so easily. Turner lit a cigarette, and he was about to take a puff when it was extinguished by Wanda. At this moment, Wanda already hated this person. In Wanda's mind, Turner is like the evil villain in the movie. So Wanda behaved very temperamentally. Seeing the cross-section of the front end of the cigarette cut by invisible forces, Turner threw the cigarette on the ground, pointed at Charles and said, "You think you're a victim, right? You are the tumor of this world, the freak who shouldn't exist." Quote. My daughter is only 5 years old and died in your mutant's ability to lose control. So, mutants deserve all hell. What about the mutant kids you killed? Ling Di snorted coldly, and was about to go to the life of Geithner. However, the energy weapon that had always been pointed at by her like an arm did not appear in her hand this time. At this moment, it seems that all mutants have lost their abilities. The sudden change made the mutant crowd can't help but panic, and the Thunderbird seemed to realize what was happening, and a pair of sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. Pulse. This is the ability of the interference of the pulse. He can eliminate the ability of a mutant within a certain range. Everyone go back. Just get out of the interference range of the pulse. The Thunderbird is well aware of the ability of impulses. Because Pulse is the elder of the Mutant Protection Organization, he created the Mutant Protection Organization together with Thunderbird, Sweet Dream, Polaris and others. Unexpectedly, even Pulse became a lackey of the Sentinel Security Company. Shoot! Turner was waiting for this opportunity, and he shouted viciously to the mercenaries behind him. Mercenaries with various well-equipped equipment pull the trigger, and tongues of fire spit out like the cry of a regional devil. The first time Wanda didn't have time to stop the bullets for the mutants. This time she did, and Wanda held up the red mist of light in both hands, like a barrier. The bullet hit the top, fell to the ground, and after a while piled up warheads. Turner saw that there were mutants who could use their abilities, and his expression became very unnatural. That's impossible. How is this possible? The ability to interfere with pulses has never missed. The Sentinel Security Company has not dealt with ruthless characters, but without exception, they have become ordinary people in the interference force field of the pulse. Why is this woman in red an exception? As for why, Charles cleared better than everyone. You say Wanda is a mutant. Yes, people are mutants. You say she doesn't count. There seems to be nothing wrong with it. The origin of mutants is the Celestial God group, which has conducted an experiment on Earth that has led to the continuation of the X gene in humans from generation to generation. In tens of thousands of years of survival and reproduction, the X gene is present in all human genes. And the Celestial God group is the eternal younger brother of the 4 abstract entities of the universe. Wanda's chaos magic comes from the power of chaos. One of the 3 ancient forces of the universe. The power of chaos that has erupted in full force can even be done by the Court of Life. It is not comparable to the Tenjin group. The interference force field of the pulse is completely ineffective against Wanda, which is excusable. Not a grade in itself. In fact, Charles's mutant abilities were not fully affected except for Wanda, let alone non-mutant abilities. Even the spirit butterfly can use some of its abilities. This involves the improvement of mutants' acquired strength. The same telepathic Charles can be called the strongest brain in the world, and some mutants can only be used to flirt with girls. Although Eric of Magneto is worthy of the name Magneto. However, catching a nuclear submarine from the sea is the same as playing. Polaris Lorna, who has the same ability as him, is struggling to demolish a building at this stage, which is called a gap. Charles sensed the location of the mutant pulse, and just as he was about to solve the pulse bleed and fell to the ground first. This guy's ability looks like a fierce operation. The interference force field covered more than 100 people. But the staying power really pulls the crotch. Held out for a minute and knelt. When the interference force field disappeared, everyone's abilities returned, and this time Turner was really shocked. The fear of death almost distorted his face. Since you can't beat it, then scold, then curse, attack the mutants in the most vicious language. He was greeted by the rays of the sun from Marcos. The scorching light burned a hole in his head in an instant. Thunderbirds, warheads, and spirit butterflies all looked at this scene relatively indifferently. Wanda didn't dare to pause her gaze much, she turned her head to the side, her emotions were not particularly natural. So far, Wanda hasn't killed anyone. Not to mention such a tragic picture. After solving Turner and these mercenaries, the group rescued the remaining more than 100 mutants. After a while, Quicksilver also brought back dozens of mutants. These mutants are not in a good state, and their eyes are blackened and languishing. They are all mutants who are controlled by the Sentinel Security Company with kick, brainwashed, and ready to train into hounds. Sentinel Security dares to do whatever it wants in prison number 5 because this prison actually belongs to Trask Industries. At Eagle Sauce Prison it is privately run. Trasker Industries opened a prison in Louisiana, and there was no problem at all. When they left prison number 5, they encountered the clearers again. As usual, Thunderbirds they definitely go around, and mutant protection organizations generally don't get into trouble. But today's prison robbery is all done. I'm afraid of what these clearers do. An encounter began on the forest road, and the scavengers did not expect the mutants to resist so fiercely. Are these mutants crazy? Tantra. I don't want to die here. Quote. I've just got married, and my wife and I don't have children yet. The clearers make all kinds of unwilling sounds, and when they are abusers, they drive all kinds of high-powered cars, use weapons to attack mutants, and let out shrill and rampant laughter. Now the situation has reversed, and what was once a hunter has become a prey to be slaughtered. Charles did not sympathize with these people, he acted as a spectator in the car, but the system did not reward him for rotten. Anyway, the rotten system is quite metaphysical, and Charles has long been used to it. Telepathy, energy absorption, shining fruit plus Krypton Superman template, are 4 major pieces, superimposed together with absolute Heavenly Father level strength. Before the Ninglu level Sentinels did not appear, they were still very stable. Obtaining the vehicles sent by these pursuers, plus the cars seized from the prison, made it easier for people to escape. We destroyed a prison and killed a lot of people, and Eagle Sauce can't stay anymore. My advice is to go to Mexico, which is full of sin, but we can live well. Quote. Eclipse Marcos said. His ex-girlfriend was smuggled between Mexico and Eagle Sauce. If you go to your ex-girlfriend, if you are willing to pay the price, it should not be difficult to use that smuggling channel to go to Mexico. Thunderbird, warheads do not make sense for this. As Marcos said, they can live well in Mexico. Full of evil, full of criminals and drug lords. If they were to provoke hundreds of mutants, they would surely die without even scum. Sweet Dreams Sonia said, even if we go to Mexico, we will still face the pursuit of S.H.I.E.L.D. Don't forget that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s law enforcement powers are not limited to Eagle Sauce. Quote. These words are like a basin of cold water poured on the head. I thought that I could start a new life when I arrived in Mexico. Impossible. It is still necessary to hide in Tibet and be displaced. They have nothing to do and are used to such a life. What about those very young mutant kids? Seeing that they were all silent, Charles said, I contacted a friend last night, and as long as we rush to the beach, he will pick you up at the beach. Quote. Once there, you don't have to worry about the hunt by S.H.I.E.L.D., at least you can live a stable life for a while. There were hundreds of mutants, most of them adults, and Charles couldn't take them. Because Xavier Gifted Junior School, first of all, is the school, and then the mutant shelter. Eric of Magneto is different. The new Wakanda is in ruins, not to mention hundreds of mutants, that is, tens of thousands of mutants, and the old people are happy to receive. I believe that after a while, Lao Wan's power is the most impossible to ignore on this planet. The previous Brotherhood of Mutants was simply a small fight. Mutants building their own kingdom is the first step in the true sense. Charles understands this, but doesn't like to be a character like Eric. Because it's so tired. If you have strength, isn't it fragrant to be a rotten ancestor? Do whatever you want. If you don't want to do anything, you won't do it. Why do you have to bear a huge responsibility on yourself? Of course. Eric is such a person, he can be regarded as seeking benevolence, and gradually began to realize his life ideals. Charles was hopeful that he would succeed, and the two had the same interests in this regard. The convoy headed for the eastern coastline as Charles had said. Louisiana is waterfronted, so the drive won't be long. Wanda, when you come out of prison, you look like you're thinking, what are you thinking? Back on the RV, Charles sat comfortably on the sofa, casually brought himself a cappuccino, and poured Wanda a glass by the way. Wanda is already surprised by Charles's magical operation. Asking is magic. The mysteries of magic are endless. I was thinking about what the man said. Wanda held the coffee cup in both hands and looked at the ripples in the cup because of the bump of the vehicle and said. The person she was talking about was naturally Turner. Charles understood after thinking slightly, so he asked gently, can you tell me what you think? Quote. His daughter died in a mutant out-of-control session, and I can feel that sadness. Wanda said. It's like the battlefield in Sokovia, which took away her and Pietro's parents. What if that war took away them? Their parents must have been as sad as Turner. Charles didn't deny what she said. Yes, it's a shame that her daughter died because of a mutant. It is also true that mutant abilities are out of control. Quote. According to my statistics, in addition to congenital mutants, awakenings caused by external factors accounted for 57.5% of the total number of mutants, of which 41.8% were due to violent mood swings. If a gamma-level mutant with major defects and powerful abilities happens to awaken due to emotional problems, it is likely to cause significant harm. However, we can't persecute all mutants because of such problems. War conflicts cause greater casualties, and wars often occur because of the greed of a small number of people. Quote. We know this causal logic, so can we try those politicians in the way of sentinel security? Charles used the simplest question to make Wanda understand that mutants are right. Late at night, the convoy that was driving on the road stopped. The Thunderbird, who had just closed his eyes and rested for less than 10 minutes, opened his eyes again, and the sleepiness did not completely subside. Warhead, what's going on? Didn't cross-dressing change the shape and license plate of our car? The Thunderbird also thought someone was checking the vehicle. One of them is a mutant called cross-dressing, whose ability to change the style, color, and so on of the clothes on the body. It can also change the shape, paint and license plate of the car. As long as it is not particularly outrageous, such as turning a bus into a car and a car into a convertible, it is basically fine. Like a Toyota SUV they rode in, it was changed to a Mercedes Big G. It's not the Mounties, it's 3 women blocking the car, it looks strange. The warhead in charge of driving the car at this time said. 3 women. Thunderbird startled, and from inside the windshield, it was 3 fair women wearing the same style of black trench coat. The 3 women had the same light blonde hair, and even their appearance was exactly the same. The Thunderbird couldn't help but rub his eyes, almost suspecting that his own eyes were spent. No surprise, it's triplets, I suspect they're mutants. Warhead said, then added. Maybe it's an ability like seduction, do you need me to go down and communicate with them? You. The Thunderbird rubbed the top of the Warhead, everyone got used to treating her as a tomboy. Don't you like women, you're more likely to be seduced okay. Thunderbird said. Don't wake up Marcos and them first, let them rest a little longer, I'll take a look. Quote. The Thunderbird, who got out of the car, walked up to the 3 women and asked, 3 ladies, is there anything that can help you? Quote. John Orer, we come with friendship. The triplets said in unison. Thunderbird was startled at first, because the 3 knew his identity. But I don't know why, his consciousness suddenly became confused, and he did not generate any vigilance. The triplets knew that their control played a role and laughed. We extend the hand of friendship on behalf of the Hellfire Club. Quote. You are on the run, the Hellfire Club can shelter you, we will provide you with food, shelter and safety. Oh, the Hellfire Club came out to pick the fruit. Ever since the death of the Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw, the Hellfire Club has disappeared, seemingly secretly hoarding power. Quote. Charles appeared behind the Thunderbird, and after the convoy stopped, he noticed an abnormality, and there was a strong fluctuation of psychic power. After using the phantom transfiguration, it was found to be a multi-shadowed cuckoo, or it can also be called the three sisters of the cuckoo. They are cloned with the White Queen gene. The first to conduct this research was Trask Industries. The young White Queen was controlled by Trask Industries. Black Emperor Shah rescued the White Queen, unbeknownst at the time, that Trask Industries had cloned the multi-shadowed cuckoo using the White Queen's genes. The 5 cuckoo sisters are one and have the White Queen's powerful telepathic abilities. But while escaping from Trask Industries, 2 people died there, leaving only 3 people in the multi-shadowed cuckoo. Hearing Charles's voice, the faces of the 3 sisters changed slightly. The Hellfire Club has never been as high profile as the Brotherhood of Mutants. It is made up of the richest and most powerful mutants in the world. Even in the era of Black Emperor Shao, the Hellfire Club was unknown. Charles spoke of the Hellfire Club in a very relaxed tone, apparently knowing enough about the organization. "Who are you?" the 3 women asked at the same time, their eyes glowing blue. The more abilities are used, the more intense the blue light of the eyes will be. However, their psychic power was not enough to affect Charles. Even the White Queen is not enough to see. Not to mention her clone, or the multi-shadowed cuckoo that lost 2 clones. Who is the leader of the Hellfire Club now? Black Queen Reva Page, or White Queen Emma Grace Frost, or White Bishop Lucas Bishop? Quote. Charles said several names in succession, making the 3 cuckoo sisters think that he had a special relationship with the Hellfire Club. Positions in the Hellfire Club are divided according to chess. After the death of Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw, the Hellfire Club fell into a brief period of chaos. After reshuffling, you can still have an extraordinary status. It is the Black Queen, the White Queen and the White Bishop. The identities of the 3 people, even the non-core members of the Hellfire Club, cannot be fully known. Who are you? This time, the 3 sisters of the cuckoo did not dare to use their abilities, but asked very respectfully. Take me to the current leader of Hellfire, and then you will know. Instead of answering the cuckoo sisters, Charles uses a phantom transfiguration to take the 3 away from the place. After the 3 sisters of the cuckoo left, the Thunderbird leisurely returned to his senses, and he patted his somewhat confused head. Almost forgot what just happened. It was as if after seeing those 3 women, his spirit became trance. Seeing the warhead get out of the car, Thunderbird asked, "What about those 3 people just now, am I dreaming?" Quote. No, those 3 were taken by Charles, I don't know what they talked about. But I look at you, I really seem to be seduced. Warhead shrugged. Thunderbird admits that the 3 women are good looking, but they are seducted, it can't be. God forbid, I hope the Warhead does not tell these words to Sweet Dreams. As for Charles taking people there, then it's not their business, they can't manage the world of the big guy. At this time, a deep-sea submarine made of vibranium was heading for Eagle Sauce. I don't know if it's the reason for the cowardice, Eric Magneto is a little distracted, and he looks restless inside the submarine. Take a deep breath, isn't it that Charles said to give me a surprise? Can there be any surprise, isn't it to receive a batch of mutants, so it is mysterious. Magneto Eric adjusted his mood with a deep breath. But Charles he is familiar, Charles said surprise. Grandma's, really looking forward to it. If you look forward to the problem, you will look forward to it. Why are you so panicked? This is not scientific, and I have not seen a big scene. Thousands of shells rained down on the island of Cuba without blinking an eye. Suddenly, Eric looked up and found that the Toad Man was looking at him with a crack in the door. Those frog-like eyes rotated with their movements. Huh. Eric made a voice full of killing intent. The Toad immediately laughed. Boss, we're about to cross the Eagle Sauce Sea realm. So what? You know the technology of those blacks, their radar can't detect us. Eric responded dissatisfied. Then he glared at the Toad. Go out and don't talk nonsense, I heard that there are tribes in the Heijo continent that like to eat barbecue toads. The Toad Man shrunk his neck in fright, and his heart was full of slander for Eric. Everyone knows that you and Professor X are old friends, and they don't admit it. And lo and behold, I'll see Professor X right away. Of course, he only dared to think in his heart that if anyone knew that it was passed out from him. Not to mention Eric, even Professor X could turn him into a demented toad. The submarine was about to cross the sea border, and everyone was quite nervous. When they passed through, there was no situation of being locked by the radar, and they were relieved. As Eric said, there is something about the technology that Wakanda relies on vibranium to develop. Their aircraft can fly unimpeded to various countries. Their submarines can reach a port city without knowing it. Now, Eric is using vibranium to create a suit for himself to make up for his shortcomings. Charles had not returned after leaving, and the Thunderbirds had arrived at the agreed beach with all the mutants. It's a wild beach, and because no one manages it, the tide always brings poisonous jellyfish. Over time, fewer people come here to play. Thunderbird, when are we going to wait? The warhead smoked a cigarette and flicked the butt of the cigarette on the ground, a little impatiently. Charles only told them the location, not the time. After Charles and the three Cuckoo sisters left last night, they are now like headless flies. Not impatient. But SHIELD, FBI, and Louisiana's military police are definitely arresting them. They have no turning back. If no one picks them up here, they could be stuck on this beach. Mom, something is coming. There was a small child in the mutant crowd, pointing to the distance of the sea and saying. This child's ability is super sensing. The Thunderbird closed his eyes, maximizing his hearing, and also heard different sounds in the sea, and a strange look appeared on his face. It's a submarine is coming. Submarine. Marcos jumped off the hood and looked solemnly into the sea. Charles told them that someone would pick them up here. If it's a passing cruise ship, there's obviously no problem. A submarine. How did the submarine escape the blockade of Eagle Sauce and come to this sea? Therefore, the subconscious crowd regarded this submarine as an armed force of Eagle Sauce to deal with them. When the submarine reveals its true appearance from the sea water slides from both sides. The mutants on the coast all took a fighting stance. At this time, the submarine opened, Magneto Eric slowly flew out, and he smiled at the mutants in the field. My compatriots, please put away your vigilance and hostility. Quote. I, Magneto Eric Lanchel, the first leader of the Mutant Independent Kingdom, invite you to join my kingdom. God, he's Eric Magneto. When Eric declared his name, everyone was shocked. Let the legendary existence of mutants exist Magneto. That's right. Magneto Eric, an almost godlike existence in the minds of all mutants. All the mutants in this world have heard about the great deeds of Professor X and Magneto. It's a pity that these two people don't have the same philosophy. If the two joined forces, the situation of the mutants might not be as difficult as it is now. Of course. Smart mutants like Mimung care more about Eric's identity, but what he says. Mutant Independent Kingdom. Magneto Eric has established the mutant nation. After Eric, powerful mutants such as Raven the Witch and Toad Man appear, all of which show their strength. Mutant Independent Kingdom belongs to the mutants' own homeland. They don't have to hide around, they don't have to dress up in disguise, they don't have to be scared. In that land, they boldly and freely displayed themselves. Suddenly, all the mutants yearned for it. Raven and Thunderbird maintain order, and all the mutants enter the submarine in an orderly manner. Wanda, Quicksilver Pietro, and Twinkle Clarice are among the exceptions, and they will not go to the so-called Mutant Independent Kingdom. Charles has told Wanda to drive back to their Texas accommodation. As for why Clarice didn't open a portal. Of course, because the journey is always enjoyable. The results of travel are often not as interesting as the process. At first, Charles took them on a trip, and now let them go home on their own, which is a kind of growth. In addition to Wanda and them, Lingdi also chose to stay in Eagle Sauce. To be honest, I do really want to go to the Mutant Independent Kingdom. Mutants have existed in this world for thousands of years, a country of mutants, and for the first time in thousands of years, mutants have truly united. However, there are still a lot of mutants who need me in Eagle Sauce. Quote. The independent kingdom of mutants will always be a solid backing for all mutants. Eric promised Spirit Butterfly. When the Mutant Independent Kingdom is established, he will have to take on these responsibilities. Finally, Eric looked at the green-haired young girl standing there alone. When he saw her, Eric knew where his inexplicable excitement and nervousness came from. Also know the surprise that Charles said. The perception and joy between the magnetic fields made him understand why. It all came from a passion from a young age. Eric did not know until today, until this moment, that he had a daughter in the world. My dear, you are very similar to your mother Susanna. Eric walked towards Lorna, his voice full of nostalgia. You don't deserve to mention her. Lorna yelled at Eric. Eric was silent. Of course, he really didn't deserve it. He didn't even know that the woman bore him a daughter. So he is not a competent husband, and even less a competent father. Thunderbird and Marco standing on the edge of the beach looked at each other, neither knowing what was going on. Dream Sonya's emotions are delicate, and she seems to know a little eyebrows for a long time. Have you never wondered who Lorna's abilities inherit from? She never mentioned her father in the organization. Seeing the two guys who were still a little dazed. Maimung couldn't help but shake her head. These two stupid straight men. Isn't Charles here? Raven asked Sweet Dream curiously. She hadn't seen Charles since Hell's Kitchen. He thought Charles had contacted Eric and would show up here. That's why Raven followed. Otherwise, there are still a lot of things in the mutant independent kingdom that she needs to deal with. You know Charles. He left last night with the triplet mutants. Quote. Sweet Dream said. Ruiwan smiled a little, and couldn't help but miss the good old days. Of course I knew him. I went to his house to steal food when I was hungry as a child, and I became his mother. But he had a powerful telepathic ability, and he immediately recognized my disguise. Quote. Telepathy. At this time, it was Sweet Dream's turn to be surprised. In prison No. 5, Charles uses the same abilities as Lorna, and also has flying abilities and superpowers. Now the witch Raven tells them that Charles also has a powerful telepathic. Otherwise, Professor X, Charles, he has the strongest brain on the planet. Whenever Charles is introduced like this, Raven feels a sense of pride from the bottom of her heart. Professor X. Charles is the famous Professor X. Quote. Shield. In Louisiana, the robbery at Jail 5 occurred, and the documents were delivered to Nick Fury's desk. This happened after the war at Xavier's School of Gifted Youth. Another vicious incident caused by mutants. The problem of mutants has become the most unignorable problem. Hill, can you find the initiator of the prison robbery? Fury asked. All surveillance information about Prison 5 has been hacked, so we don't know who the participants in the robbery are. But now there's a satellite photo of the southern coast of Louisiana that you should check out. Quote. Hill sent a satellite photo to Fury's computer. The photo is blurry, but a submarine and Magneto Eric can still be seen. The disappearing Magneto Eric has finally appeared, and there is also a submarine, and it looks like the mutants already have some kind of military power. Fury's expression was solemn. I'm afraid the plan for mutants will have to be advanced. Magneto Eric, Professor X Charles, mysterious flashers, mutants are already growing in strength. SHIELD cannot continue to condone such a thing. Just then, Coulson pushed the door in. Director, the good news is that the mutant antidote in Worthington Labs has been successfully developed, and we can put this drug on the market. Fury's hazy face finally revealed a smile. He stood up and said to Coulson, tell Dr. Worthington Kurds that I will use SHIELD resources to get the drug mass-produced as soon as possible. Hill, hold a press conference tonight to announce the successful development of the mutant antidote. Quote. Also, find a way to contact Thor, the Mage Temple of New York. Those Karma Taj mages must have a way. Quote. I know Eric Magneto, he won't sit still. When the two henchmen left, Fury opened the encrypted drawer, which contained an old-fashioned pager. Maybe it's time for Earth to need Carol. Magneto Eric and they have just returned to Wakanda, now the mutant independent kingdom. SHIELD held a press conference to announce the development of a mutant antidote. The press conference lasted half an hour. From the ugliness of mutant alienation, to the harm of mutant abilities getting out of control. Mutants are like the cancer of this world. Now, SHIELD has found a way to eradicate it. SHIELD calls on mutants around the world to stand under the sun, register with the appropriate authorities, and wait for the mutant's antidote injection. Eric, they claim to have developed a mutant antidote. Raven found Eric and clicked on the SHIELD press conference, and Eric only looked at the beginning and snorted coldly. Shameless SHIELD. This is just the mutant registration bill that was shelved that year. Let the mutants stand up and register their abilities, and then facilitate their more accurate capture. This time it looks different. SHIELD released a video of drug development, and there are Epsilon-level mutants who have indeed returned to human form. Raven pulls the video's progress bar to the appropriate position. In the video, Worthington Lab, a doctor injects a drug into a mutant. The mutant who was originally physically alienated is rapidly returning to human form. Correspondingly, his abilities will also disappear. It's like something suppresses the X gene. Eric watched the video carefully, and his eyebrows couldn't help but twist together. He realized what a threat this thing posed to the mutant community. This threat goes beyond a war. If the mutant antidote comes out, two voices will be separated within the mutant. Whether he or not, the power of mutants will shrink significantly. The mutant antidote must not be allowed to appear. Eric made a decision instantly. Meanwhile, Atlanta, the capital of Georgia. As soon as Charles finished reading the news, he received a call from the storm woman Orlo. Charles, have you watched TV, SHIELD's latest press conference? Storm Girl asked straight to the point. Charles could guess the situation facing the school and nodded. I just finished reading it, what do you think? Quote. He didn't ask the students what they thought. Because the choice of teacher is crucial, one teacher affects a group of students. A student, on the other hand, only represents his own point of view. The so-called antidote for me, that's just the poison that eliminates my power. It doesn't matter to Stecco, he doesn't care about a flaw compared to protecting the students. Hank is more impressed, he doesn't like to stay like a beast forever. As for Jean, Steele, and Darwin, Storm doesn't mention them. But Charles could imagine it. For Jean, the mutant antidote makes no sense. She is one of the most perfect mutants. Steelix probably doesn't offer a good opinion. One said, how should the injection of the mutant's antidote pierce his body? It is expected that this will become another project in the Worthington lab. As for Darwin should not be interested in listening to the storm lady finish her sentence. Charles thought for a moment and said, to be honest, I am skeptical of this potion, first, because this potion has not been tested over time, and we do not know the impact it will have in the future. Second, there is never a shortage of careerists, and when we have the ability, we can protect ourselves. When we give up our capabilities, who can guarantee that we will not become research fodder? Think about it. Once mutants, what a treasure they have in their genes. Quote. You have a good point, Charles, I will relay these words to everyone. Storm said on the phone. The turmoil in which S.H.I.E.L.D. announced the mutant antidote has actually just begun. Soon there will be marches and protests everywhere. In X-Men 3, Magneto leads mutants to attack Alcatraz, where Worthington's lab is located. In this world, will Eric stand by and remain indifferent? Apparently impossible. But Charles was not prepared to intervene, and the situation developed as it should. Compared to the Sentinel robot, the threat of mutant antidote is just that. At best, it is a plan to draw salaries from the bottom of the cauldron. Sentinel robots are the killers that destroy mutants. After seeing the sharp-knifed robot in Louisiana, Charles realized that the Sentinel robot developed by Trasker Industries was already very threatening. This development progress is faster than he expected. Trask Industry must be destroyed as soon as possible. In the evening, Charles got his wish and met the Black Queen Reva Peggy of the Dust Servant. In the time of the Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw, it was just a small character. Not as important as the Red Devil, Torrent and Angel Salvatore around the Black Emperor. So Reva didn't know Charles. Esme told me that you stopped them from bringing them back to the Louisiana Mutant Protection Organization. Well, where did you get the guts to meet me here? Quote. For centuries, no one who was an enemy of the Hellfire Club ended well. Reva elegantly poured herself a glass of whiskey, and she took a sip and said. Standing on the side, in addition to the three Cuckoo sisters, there was also a very burly mutant. So she is very confident. This is her home turf. Charles couldn't help but laugh when he heard Reva's description of the Hellfire Club. It seems that you are very forgetful. Sebastian Shaw was killed 10 years ago, and no one in the Hellfire Club has sought revenge on X and Magneto from beginning to end. Charles's behavior of exposing the old bottom made Reva face stiffen. The Hellfire Club is the oldest mutant organization to date. But not the strongest. X-Men, Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants, are not what they can provoke now. Angry and corrupted, Reva loses the interest in showing off how powerful the Hellfire Club is. She put her glass aside, put her hands on the table, looked at Charles condescendingly, and said, "Because you have caused the Hellfire Club to suffer great losses, now you have two ways to go. Allegiance to the Hellfire Club or death." Quote, "I don't like either, I want to choose the third way, the Hellfire Club to pledge allegiance to me." Huh. Like a megalomaniac. Reva raised an eyebrow, and the burly mutant standing behind Charles understood. I saw that his already thick arm bulged again, and his muscles became terrifying. This mutant's ability is to control the muscles of the body. He can turn into a muscle monster in an instant, and his strength is dozens of times greater than that of ordinary people. I saw him grab Charles sharply, and Charles didn't say a word, and threw a punch at him. Bang! This man was like a rag doll that had been beaten flying, directly smashing the door behind Charles, and embedded in the marble wall. Reva was taken aback when she ordered the three Cuckoo sisters to take control of Charles. The three sisters looked bitter. "Reva, we can't do it, our control doesn't work for him. Look, your subordinates can't win me, so it's better to consider my proposal." Charles stood up and said. Reva's face flushed with coldness. "You're happy too soon." Suddenly, Reva sends a piercing sonic attack on Charles. This is her mutant ability, which can suppress almost all mutants in an instant, and has the effect of making people faint and kill. Charles's body flashed strange fluctuations, and energy absorption absorbed the sound wave energy cleanly. This is Sebastian Shaw's energy absorption. How many abilities do you have? When Reva saw this ability, the sound became extremely unnatural. The Black Emperor, Sebastian Shaw, used this ability to truly conquer the Hellfire Club. This person in front of him has energy absorption, telepathy, and superpower, and he is even more powerful than the Black Emperor. How many abilities I have, that's not what you should know. I ask one last time, the Hellfire Club pledges allegiance to me, do you agree? Charles came to Reva and asked as he wrapped his hand around her neck. Reva could sense Charles's killing intent. Just say no. She will definitely be screwed off her neck. Reva, who felt almost suffocated, said with difficulty, "Agree, I will be loyal to you." Quote. After getting a satisfactory answer, Charles let go of his hand, and Reva knelt on the ground and gulped for fresh air. It's like a fish dying of thirst, back in the water. After the body got enough oxygen, Reva looked at Charles carefully and said, "The Hellfire Club may not be what you think. Even if I owe my allegiance to you, you are still not the master of the club." Quote. Because above me there is also a circle of core, and the inner circle controls all the resources of the Hellfire Club. I am only the leader elected by the inner circle, just like the CEO of the company, and the actual power is still in the hands of the inner circle. Quote. Charles felt that Reva underestimated himself. How could he not know the inner circle? The inner circle is made up of the most powerful and wealthy mutant families in the world. In the long history, there have been families that have not had mutants for 2 or 3 generations in a row. Therefore, the inner circle family is not necessarily all mutants. But that's in the past. The Black Emperor, Sebastian Shaw, slaughtered the families who did not have mutants. Now the inner circle is pure, all those who hold power are mutants, and at least the interests are the same. Then let them come to Atlanta and meet the new owner of the Hellfire Club, Charles the White King. Charles said. Positions in the Hellfire Club are divided according to chess. There are kings, queens, bishops, chariots, knights and janissaries, which are divided into black and white. This was set up when the Hellfire Club was first created. For almost 100 years, this inheritance has been unimportant, and many positions are vacant. For example, the era of the Black Emperor Sebastian possesses Black Queen Reva, Black Bishop Azkal, Black Car Rapids, Black Knight Angel Salvatore. Emma the White Queen, Bishop Lucas Bishop, the rest of the White King, White Che, White Knight, and Black and White Praetorian Guard are all vacancies. In the post-Sebastian era, there were even more positions vacant. Now Charles calls himself the White King, and there is no problem. In order to avoid Reva betraying herself, Charles also imposes a thought stamp on her. After showing his invincible demeanor, this ideological steel seal is extremely strong. Let Reva not have the slightest intention of resisting Charles. San Francisco Bay, California. One aircraft after another lifted their stealth state and appeared in the sky. When these vehicles appeared, the Eagle Sauce Military Department, SHIELD, and the CIA all got the news. On the territory of Eagle Sauce, unknown fighters have appeared, which is a provocation to Eagle Sauce. As a result, dozens of warplanes took off from bases in California to target these unknown intruders. Magneto Eric, wearing vibranium armor, came out of the craft. He soars into the air, overlooking San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge below. At the same time, his picture appeared on all of Eagle Sauce's televisions. This is the ability of mutants, invading TV signals, live broadcasting. I'm sure you all know who I am. I, Magneto, Eric Landshell, warn SHIELD as the leader of the Mutant Independent Kingdom. Stop all your research on mutant healing potions. Mutants all over the world are not sick, we are healthier than anyone. Mutants are the pioneers of human evolution, and now cowardly humans are trying to kill the possibility of evolution for the sake of their comfort zone. Quote. This is the first and only warning from the Mutant Independent Kingdom. You have an hour to destroy the Worthington Laboratory, and if you don't agree, it's tantamount to war with our country. Quote. The mutants in Eagle Sauce saw Eric's speech, and their blood boiled. Mutant Independent Kingdom. Mutants have their own home. We are not sick, we are just pioneers of human evolution. The mutants of the parade seemed to have a backbone, and they all shouted loudly. SHIELD is not curing them at all, but is stifling the possibility of human evolution. This frenzy has caused mutants everywhere in Eagle Sauce to stand up and resist. Fury was not surprised to learn all this. Magneto Eric's character doesn't allow him to sit still, which is to be expected. The only thing that surprised Fury was the Mutant Independent Kingdom. When did Eric establish the mutant nation? There are also those fighters with a sense of technology, which are more advanced than SHIELD's Coon-type fighters. Tony, where are you now? Let me look below. I see the Willis Group building. Obviously I'm over Chicago. Give me 20 minutes, I can get to San Francisco. The familiar tone of Tony Stark came from the loudspeaker. Before I arrive, let the pilots in California not act rashly. An order has been given to them. That's Eric. Magneto, I hope your anti-magnetic armor will work. Fury said. This time, he not only sent Iron Man, but the entire Avengers also poured out. Dr. Banner and others arrived in San Francisco yesterday. Time passes by minute by minute. The reason why Eric did not attack the Worthington Laboratory in the first place was because this operation was not just about destroying the mutant antidote. At the same time, it is also the strongest voice to the world to send the independent kingdom of mutants. Only in this way can the mutant independent kingdom gain recognition from the world. Blitzkrieg. That's something from the Brotherhood of Mutants. Sensing Iron Man's rapid approach, Eric looked grim and said, it seems that humans can only realize their mistakes after being beaten. Quote. It seems to me that this sentence also applies to mutants. Why can't you obediently receive treatment? It will be good for everyone. With a piercing sound wave, Tony Stark came in front of Magneto Eric. Tony Stark saw that Magneto was also wearing armor, which was a relatively retro armor and did not have any sci-fi color. He couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Seriously, your armor is ugly. If mutants are all your aesthetics, I don't think you are the pioneers of human evolution. Shut up. With a wave of Eric's palm, a steel cable on the Golden Gate Bridge broke and bounced towards Tony. This is the first time he has met Iron Man himself. Tony on TV is annoying enough, but I didn't expect reality to be even more annoying. Facing the catapulted steel cable, Tony shot a scorching laser from the palm of his hand, cutting the steel cable in two in an instant. Eric grabbed Tony, but he felt strange when he squeezed his palm. Can't control it. He is obviously wearing a metal suit, but his abilities are ineffective against Tony. With this stunned effort, Eric punched Tony. He was bombarded in the chest again by a hand. Changed to normal Magneto, this set of combination punches is already on his knees. Many mutants are like this, attacking high and defending low. It looks like Grabman, the attack is bursting, and casually destroying can destroy a skyscraper. In fact, not even a single bullet can be stopped. Of course, most mutants are excusable and limited by the ability itself. Eric is pure crotch pulling. However, anyone who can use a magnetic field barrier, or use magnetic force to strengthen the flesh, will not be successful in close combat. Fortunately, he used vibranium to create a set of fully duplex armor. The property of vibranium is that it absorbs vibration waves, and it does not transmit force vibrations. So, Tony's attack is 0 for Eric, who wears a full set of vibranium armor. After a tentative romantically exchange, both men looked at each other in shock. Eric shocked Tony's steel suit he couldn't control, and there was a magnetic field on the outside of the suit, shielding his power. Tony is shocked that Eric is wearing something that looks exactly like Team America's shield. His father, Howard Stark, was only given a piece of vibranium metal from which he forged Captain America's shield. Magneto Eric has a full set of vibranium armor. Although Charles was not at the scene, from the TV broadcast, you can see the battle between Eric Magneto and Tony Iron Man. Eric's performance really made Charles want to fly in front of him, and Irti ordered to teach him how to fight. You, a mutant who masters one of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, electromagnetism, has fought back and forth against Tony at this stage. You don't feel ashamed, you still feel shame. Because every time Magneto Eric is mentioned, people can't help but think of another powerful alpha-level mutant X. It's like North Chow Fung, South 287 Morong. Putting the names of 2 people together, Charles felt very disappointed. Charles, the people from the inner circle have arrived, do you want to take them to the conference room? Esme walked into the office and asked. At first they called Charles the White King. Charles felt that the title was too secondary. Just let them call themselves Charles. Anyway, a person's majesty and status are not interpreted by name. On the contrary, when a person has great strength but shows modesty and low-key, it will be more gentlemanly. At least the 3 Cuckoo sisters liked to work under Charles from the bottom of their hearts. In the past, Riva was incompetent and irritable, and he always trembled when working for Rua. Working for Charles, but like a spring breeze. Charles withdrew his gaze from the TV and said to Esme, "Don't bother so much, just let them come to the office to meet me." Quote. Before Esme could speak, an arrogant voice came in first. Hee, it looks like some people haven't figured out the situation. Riva called the inner circle meeting, not to meet a white king who appeared out of nowhere, but to actually convince us that you are better qualified for the role of manager than Reva. Quote. A pot-bellied white man walked in. He wears a decent black tuxedo, a top hat unusual in modern times, and a black crutch in his hand. If you change that crutch for an umbrella, with his hooked nose. He said his name was Penguin, and Charles wouldn't be surprised. Wendell, before you open your mouth next time, it's best to inquire about who you're talking to. Because that allows you to live longer. Quote. Emma the White Queen walked into the office with a powerful aura and mercilessly said sarcastically to the former. I speak like this to everyone except the Black Emperor Sebastian Shaw. The man named Wendell still said with a hard mouth. However, the attitude has converged somewhat. The Black Emperor once cleansed the inner circle with bloody means. Now the strongest force in the inner circle is Emma the White Queen's Frost group. Dear Charles, it's great to see you here, it looks like the gunshot wounds no longer bother you. The White Queen approached and hugged Charles. When dealing with the Black Emperor, Professor X let go of the White Queen Emma, and the relationship between the two has always been good. Everyone was confused, completely unaware of what the relationship between Charles and the White Queen was. One thing is certain, though. Riva became the manager of the Hellfire Club, and it was the White Queen who decided by the crowd. The White Queen can help Riva up. You can lift this one called Charles up. There are also some people in the inner circle who look at each other, all thinking about whether to contradict the White Queen. Because the Hellfire Club continues to develop like this, it will become the world of the White Queen. At this moment, a hearty voice sounded. Ha ha ha, when Reva notified the inner circle of the meeting and said let's meet a guy called the White King, I was thinking about which lawless mutant, but I didn't expect it to be you. White Bishop Lucas Bishop walked into the office and also came to a bear hug with Charles. The two have fought side by side. Looks like you don't know who Charles is. Eric Magneto is at war with the Avengers in San Francisco, and the mutants who can be compared to Eric are the only X in this world to grant Charles Xavier. Quote. Lucas said loudly. Charles was left speechless by him. I'm not a teenage hairy boy, so it's a shame. And don't put yourself and Magneto Eric that dish-coon together. But it does have benefits. He originally thought that dealing with the inner circle would require some means. A group of unruly people is not so easy to accept. When Lucas revealed his identity, coupled with the support of Emma the White Queen and Bishop Lucas, Charles became the new leader of the Hellfire Club. He didn't feel resistance to the process. That's right. It is the new rulers, not the managers. Reva belongs to the administrator of the Hellfire Club because her power is subject to the inner circle. The Black Emperor Sebastian is in power, and the inner circle is completely at his service. Since the Black Queen, Charles is the new ruler of the Hellfire Club. What is this called? Live the way you hate the most. Well, the Black Emperor is something that Eric hates, and it has nothing to do with himself. Charles, Eric has established the mutant country, don't we go to San Francisco to help him? Emma the White Queen sat on the sofa, she looked at the picture broadcast on the TV and frowned. The problem of mutant antidotes. It's also a nuisance for the Hellfire Club. So when Reva announced the Circle of Heart meeting, they all rushed to Atlanta as quickly as they could. Eric can handle the situation over there, we have other things to do. The thoughts in Charles's mind were, let me put a rot first, develop a wave. Something else. What could be more important than an antidote for mutants? Quote. Lucas, who was quick to talk, asked. The Sentinel robot developed by Trasker Industries, that is the real disaster of mutants. I would like you to identify factories and research institutions related to all Trasker Industries, including subsidiaries in which Trasker Industries has a stake. Quote. This is the real reason why Charles wants to master the Hellfire Club. To destroy the Trask industry, it is not the destruction of the company building that will solve the problem. Sentinel robot-related production lines, various patent projects, decades of research materials, everything must be completely destroyed. The inner circle holds huge social resources. They can be located from various channels to Trasker Industrial to extend all tentacles. It's better than grabbing a top executive at Trasker Industries. Get more complete into his brain. Of course, people should also be caught. The key is to prepare one with both hands. San Francisco Bay. Mutants fly Wakanda fighters and military fighters to fight, and the battle-loss ratio can reach 1 to 10. Because the Wakanda fighter is not purely vibranium. It is an alloy mixed with vibranium and is not completely immune to the threat of human BGDJ thermal weapons. The air battle was fought to the end, and the fighters of both sides were basically scrapped. Alcatraz Island, where Worthington's laboratory is located, has become a new warring zone. Dr. Banner transforms into Hulk form. As soon as he roared, he was blasted away by a majestic force. This power was unleashed by the Fenris twins. The mutants brought to San Francisco by Eric this time are all mutant backbones. If it were Charles, he would have left underage mutant children in Wakanda. But Eric values everyone's abilities more. The Hulk who was blasted away did not react, and then he was smashed on the door of the head by a car. The warhead uses the power of the shock wave to bounce a military off-road vehicle onto the Hulk. The angry Hulk had just completed his transformation, and before he could see his opponent, he was hit twice in succession, which made his anger even stronger. It's unwise to provoke the big guys, these mutants. Natasha said, and then out of the corner of her eye she caught a glimpse of someone breaking into Worthington's lab. Barton covers me, I'll stop those mutants. Natasha said to Barton, and then handed her back to Barton. She ran quickly through the field, and one mutant after another who wanted to stop was shot by Hawkeye Patton's bow and arrow. As Natasha approached the door of the laboratory, a black figure appeared in the diagonal thorn, and she quickly rolled over to dodge, and the sharp blade almost slashed across her body. Even so, Natasha's cheek was still scratched a little. She looked at the woman who had hurt herself, a typical Asian woman with a blade like a short sword on her 10 fingers. Death Woman Yuriko Koyama. Almost instantly, Barton's arrow shot at the Death Woman. Never hurt a woman's face, you don't know how many people will hate you for it. Natasha wiped the blood from her face and said. Barton shook his head. Natasha, are you saying I'm secretly in love with you? Quote. I didn't say that, you thought so. No, that's what you mean, but I want to say I have a wife. Barton fights with Natasha while shooting over a mutant. I love her so much. Saying that, he shot over another mutant. And she's beautiful. The third arrow was shot at a mutant, but it missed. Because that mutant jumped very high, the bouncing power was amazing, it was the Toad Man. I've encountered a tricky one here, and you'll have to rely on you later. Barton flicked the compound bow, making its morphological change more suitable for melee combat. Natasha smiled wryly and looked at the dead woman who pulled the bow and arrow out of her body. This woman has the same self-healing ability as Wolverine Logan. I guess it's trickier on my side. I hope Steve can stop the mutants inside. The alarm sounded in Worthington's laboratory, and the American team called up the map of S.H.I.E.L.D. to rescue the people in the deepest part of the laboratory, because that was the key to the mutants' antidote. Suddenly, an iron cabinet smashed into him, and he blocked it with his shield. It was Thunderbird John Aurora who blocked the American team. Steve felt affectionate when he saw the dog tag around his neck, which was Eagle Sauce's military identity tag. I know you, the leader of the Louisiana Mutant Protection Organization. To be honest, I admire your courage. I don't want to fight you. Steve said truthfully. Protecting the weak, that's something Steve approves. Just like what they did back then, they stood up to artillery fire in the most frontline positions, just for the innocent people behind them. How the relationship between mutants and humans will develop. It wasn't something Steve could do, he was always just a soldier. But a tough guy like the Thunderbird was also the best soldier in his time. If not for the enemy, Steve felt he could have a drink with him. Yes, you have always been my idol too. I had a lot of your toys when I was a child. But I had to ruin the source of the mutant antidote. Quote. After Thunderbird finished speaking, he pulled out 2 short knives from his body. He leaned down slightly, like a fierce leopard in an attacking stance. Steve jerked his shield. The Thunderbird dodged sideways and stabbed him with a short knife in his right hand. Steve slammed his body into the Thunderbird's chest, pressing it against the wall. Then he pulled out the shield embedded in the wall and smashed it at the Thunderbird, who blocked the shield with a short knife in his left hand. The shield and blade rubbed against each other and emitted fire. Steve and Mutant Thunderbird, injected with super soldier serum, are evenly matched. However, Steve's fighting skills are more proficient. In Marvel, Captain America's Steve Rogers' fighting skills are almost ceiling level. He suddenly hit one knee on the Thunderbird's lower body, and the Thunderbird screamed, his legs clamped, and he almost couldn't stand up. Sorry, I don't want that either. Immediately afterwards, Steve smashes the Thunderbird with his shield. When he came to the deepest part of the laboratory, he discovered that the deepest secrets of Worthington's laboratory were not sophisticated instruments or research materials. It was just a pure white children's room. A 10-year-old child is sitting on the floor playing a racing game. As if he doesn't care about everything that happens in the outside world. Young man, I need to take you to safety. Steve picked it up and evacuated through the emergency exit of Worthington Lab. Under the hospital gown the child was wearing, Steve saw many shocking wounds. It's all the result of research in Worthington's lab. This made him feel boundless anger in his heart. Steve came outside with the baby in his arms and found that mutants and humans outside were confronting. When he appeared holding the child, all eyes were focused on him. To be precise, it was the bald child in his arms. Is this the secret hole card of Worthington Lab? Tony arrives at Steven's side, his anti-magnetic armor on the verge of turning into a battle-damaged version. Eric almost demolished the Golden Gate Bridge and smashed everything on him. Yes. Steve replied angrily. He didn't know if Fury knew what Worthington had done. But what Worthington has done has exceeded his bottom line. Just as Eric raised his hand to issue the order for a general attack, bringing the operation to a successful end. A rainbow bridge of light descended from the sky and descended on Alcatraz Island. Thor uses the repaired rainbow bridge to return to Earth. I saw him holding Mjolnir, turned back to Tony and Steven and smiled. Guys, it looks like I'm here at the right time. Before the appearance of Thor, the combat power of mutants and humans led by Eric was about 4 or 6. Mutants have a 60% chance of victory, and humans have a 40% chance of winning. But, when Thor appears, the scale of victory and defeat is tilted. This Prince of Asgard is still above the Green Giant. Eric has difficulty dealing with both Iron Man and Thor. But if no one restrained him, he could wipe out most mutants. We withdraw. Eric said with an ugly face. It's not a party, you can come whenever you want, and you can go whenever you want. As soon as Tony's voice fell, Jarvis reminded him that there had been an unexplained change in spatial parameters. At the same time, a huge deep spatial passage appeared behind Eric. This is the ability to rescue an Eastern mutant called Tong Tien Dao from prison number 5. His body will transform into a teleportation channel where he is, and this passage will take people to the places he has been. Lorna, you go back with them first. Eric said to Polaris Lorna. Lorna glanced at Eric and said nothing. Let Marcos help the Thunderbird, who is still difficult to walk, and Ruiwan and the others left one after another. Looking at Eric who left behind, Thor said, it seems that you are a qualified leader, but you should not start a war. Quote. Mutants don't wait for the human butcher's knife to fall, just as they did against Native Americans. Eric opened his mouth to refute Thor's statement, he was actually stalling for time. His left hand, which was placed behind him, turned slightly, and a piece of triangular iron was separated into the most basic iron atoms under control. The iron atoms once again condensed into countless sharp spikes. It's like a big explosion of technology in a war. Before today, Eric could not control metals to the level of atoms. The situation pressed him to constantly strengthen himself. Go. Eric throws out these spikes, like the rainstorm pear flower needle in an Oriental martial arts novel. Team America crouches down and shields himself and the mutant kid Jimmy. Natasha and Barton, the fast-acting agents, all searched for cover as fast as they could. Thor turned the hammer in his hand to block the spikes. The remaining soldiers became live targets. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Eric also entered the passage, and unexpectedly, the angry Hulk roared and chased in. Seeing this, Natasha wanted to stop him from doing something stupid, but it was too late. The next moment, the spatial passage disappeared from its place. Magneto, Eric and the Hulk are all gone. Alcatraz was left with only a devastated scene, and when a gust of wind blew, a half-burned eagle sauce flag flew with it. Tony looked around and said, so, did we win? Quote. No one responded to him, and if they had saved the whole cards of Worthington Lab, they had won. But the price is really tragic. Actually, I wanted to have a champagne to celebrate, but who can tell me what that big green guy is? Thor asked Steve. At the time of New York's dealings with the Chitaurus, the Hulk had not yet been absorbed into the Avengers. So Thor didn't know him. Natasha asked S.H.I.E.L.D. to send a Quinn fighter to pick them up. The warplanes they were flying on, as well as fighter groups in California, all crashed in the battle. Sitting atop the Quinn fighter, Hawkeye Patton looked out the porthole. The California Army and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents have begun deploying salvage efforts. Guys, before you come back, you need to go to the City of God in Brazil, where someone found the Hulk. The communication system of the Kun-type fighter showed a picture of Fury's upper body. When he found the atmosphere cold, Fury said hello to Thor, the god of thunder. Thor smiled and waved at him. Director Fury, I really don't know what method you used, this time my mother asked me to come to Earth to help you. Frigga, the diva of Asgard. After Thor's appearance on Earth, Fury studied Norse mythology specifically. He knew that the queen mother that Thor was talking about was Frigga, a goddess who excelled at magic. Presumably those mages used magical means. Relayed S.H.I.E.L.D.'s request to Frigga. Director, Magneto Eric has a full set of vibranium armor, and the fighters used by mutants are also unusual. Tony couldn't wait to get to the Tricurved Wing building and tell Fury what he was guessing. I suspect that mutants have independent kingdoms and have a huge amount of vibranium resources. I know that this time we have won Magneto, and I will apply to the Security Council for an all-out war against the mutant independent kingdom. Fury is confident in this, especially under the lure of vibranium resources. Eagle Sauce has always liked to wage war for resources. Magneto Eric's attack on Worthington Labs did not affect Fury's plans. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. proved to the world that they are capable of dealing with the crisis of mutants. On the other hand, because of Eric's attack on Alcatraz, Charles's rotten behavior, he was rewarded with a gold chest. After opening, it is Silver Super Template. Silver Superman is not comparable to ordinary Krypton Superman. Ordinary Kryptonian Superman is the strongest but sub-Heavenly Father level, can fly at supersonic speed, can survive in the vacuum environment of the universe, and can burst a 10,000-ton giant ship with one punch. But the Silver is super and can destroy a galaxy. In the face of the incomplete power of the Phoenix, and the power of chaos, he can also punch a little friend. In general, Charles, who got the Silver Super template, has really improved his strength. In the future, there is no need to worry about the power of the Phoenix storming away. Of course, now the Silver Super template is not so powerful, and you need to bask in more sun. Outside the office, Reva knocked on the door. Come in. Charles withdrew his gaze on Goldfinger, and he felt that Reva had brought him good news. Just as Charles thought, the Hellfire Club has locked down all of Trasker Industries' factories, research institutes and secret bases. Eric withdrew from San Francisco Bay. It's time for us to strike. This base in Maple Leaf Country is very suspicious. It should be the final assembly plant of the Sentinel robot. Charles saw that there was a base in Maple Leaf Country. The security level of that base is very high. The most sophisticated security company in the world is employed. And the base often enters a full load of trucks, but there is very little east-west transportation. Why did they know this? In the resources at the disposal of the Hellfire Club, there is a transport company that transports goods for that base. Truck drivers can tell from the dynamics of the car that the things they pull in are very heavy. And when transporting outward, it is just a pretense, basically empty cars. Reva heard Charles's opinion and said, "You and Emma the White Queen coincide." Quote. Let's go. Charles got up from his chair and said. In addition to the base in Maple Leaf Country, the rest of the factories, research institutions, are also targets. However, the Maple Leaf Country base needed him to personally intervene. Including Storm Girl, Laser Eye, Steel Lux, Phoenix and others. After all, the Sentinel robot that is dealing with the lifelong enemy of mutants should be given enough respect. As for Eric's side, forget it. The mutants who just fought a tough battle in San Francisco Bay are still lying in the mutant independent kingdom to repair thousands. The Avengers left from the Tricurved Wing building, just as Tony Stark also had a luxurious penthouse in Washington. Everyone came to his villa, and Thor did not see the other, and took a bunch of famous wine in the wine cabinet. Anyway, Stark's stuff, not necessarily the best, but certainly the most expensive. According to the laws of the Earth, expensive things are generally the best. Man, don't you have champagne here? Thor asked as he carried the wine to the living room. Tony, who was sitting on the sofa, pulled a backrest under his waist and looked at Thor. I thought Asgardians drink spirits. Do you like that kind of ladies' wine? I can ask Harpy to buy a few cases. You bring back Asgard by the way. Thor cares about people saying he likes ladies' wine. The warriors of Asgard are pure masters. That kind of ladies' champagne, how could it be? How could I like that? Seriously, I like vodka. I just like the atmosphere of champagne that washes off the cork. 913, the feeling of victory. Quote. Shortly after Thor finished speaking, Fury urgently found them again. Because the mutants attacked again. This time, everything about the Trask industry became a target. Fury is in a meeting of the Security Council to persuade the parliamentarians to wage an all-out war against the mutant independent kingdom. And the result? The mutants are doing things again. This made Fury very faceless. So he came out of the convention center and the first thing he did was contact the Avengers. I saw smoke coming from the Trasker Industries branch on 19th Street. Tony looked out the window at the burning building. It wasn't far from his house. The Hellfire Club has existed in the human world for centuries. In terms of the number of top powerhouses alone, the current Hellfire Club is relatively weak. But in terms of infiltration into human society and the resources at their disposal, neither the X-Police nor the Brotherhood of Mutants can compare to the Hellfire Club. This evening, all the peripheral forces of the Hellfire Club poured out under the order of the Inner Circle. Whole Eagle sauce. Or the whole of the Americas, tonight will be a sleepless night. Tony, leave the company on fire alone. You guys hurry to Maple Leaf Country. I've already called Coulson to pick you up. Maple Leaf Country, Toronto, where humans have their ultimate weapon against mutants. Fury hung up the phone and decided to go to Alexander Pierce. He decided to execute the Insight plan ahead of time, letting the 3 air carriers take off before the mutants could react. Kun-type fighter. Today is the 3rd time the Avengers have sat on Kun-type fighter. Coulson, what is the ultimate weapon that Chief Fury is talking about, like King Arthur's sword in stone? Tony asked indifferently. Hawkeye Barton, who was maintaining his compound bow, said, Tony, I thought you liked things that are trendy in technology, but I didn't expect you to like cold weapons too. Quote. I just like the Lord First Knight power. I can't hold the Meow hammer, maybe I can pull out the sword in the stone. Coulson doesn't have the light-hearted feel of Tony and Barton. It may be that Dr. Banner was recovered, and Thor, the god of thunder from Asgard. This makes the Avengers think they are invincible. Guys, I don't want to splash you guys with cold water. If those mutants know about the Toronto base and have the ultimate weapon against the mutants. Based on what happened tonight, they probably saw everything. Quote. Then what we will face may be a mutant more dangerous than Magneto. Coulson said. Natasha's face changed and she looked at Coulson. Agent Coulson, are you talking about X to Charles? At the moment, that's probably the case. At Xavier's Genius Junior School outside New York, we detected a thundercloud and mutants there were dispatched. Quote. Coles opened the boxes on the plane and took out the helmets that shielded the perception of the mind. This is the helmet of Magneto, a replica of the shield. Academy of Sciences. Because of the use of a rare metal element. This helmet could not be mass-produced. Can only be equipped for the Avengers. This thing looks stupid. After Thor put on his helmet, he turned to look at Team America and Natasha, almost unable to hold back his laughter. Tony takes off his Iron Man helmet. His helmet shrank to the size of a cell phone. When he put this phone-sized thing on the Mind Shield helmet, the two fit, and soon became a very sci-fi helmet. Outside Toronto, Trasker Industrial Base. Charles, Emma the White Queen, Bishop Bicehp the White Queen, Reva the Black Queen and others came here. They arrived one step ahead of Storm Girl. Charles was not prepared to wait for them, but saw his telepathic ability shrouded this base, and then gunshots were heard from this base one after another. All the security personnel closed themselves. Emma the White Queen glanced at Charles and said, Charles, you are really different from before. Quote. If it were the former Professor X, he would not have used this method to kill hundreds of people at once. Seeing Charles's killing decisiveness, it was much like Wendell, the penguin, took off his top hat and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He began to understand what Emma was warning him. After entering the base, there looked like nothing but corpses on the ground. A mutant pointed to the ground and said, there's another layer underneath, isn't it? He closed his eyes and sensed it again. It's 5 floors, and Trasker Industries built 5 floors underground. Leave it to me, and we'll see exactly what Trasker Industries is hiding. Wendell said flatteringly. He pointed the crutch in his hand to a little on the ground. I saw it rippling like a wave of water. All the stones are shaped into a downward staircase. It was as if on a level ground with a staircase leading to the lower floor. Emma the White Queen explained to Charles, Wendell's ability to make holes and shape material surfaces makes him a good architect. Quote. Wendell's face flushed. In organizations like the Hellfire Club, a leader in the inner circle is said to be fit to be an architect. This is really not a compliment. It's good to rob the bank, at least the vault gate is not troubled. Charles said sincerely. Wendell felt another stab in the heart and suffered tons of damage. Rob the bank. Who to look down on? He, Wendell, is the biggest smuggler in the world. Coming to the basement level, Reva exclaimed, there are hundreds of robots here. Each robot is 3.5 meters tall. These 3.9 robots reflect the cold metallic luster, and the neatly arranged robots give people a great sense of oppression in the dim space. Emma the White Queen gasped. What the hell did Trasker Industries make? The Hellfire Club has not received any news for so many years. No wonder Charles says it's something scarier than the mutant antidote. The base has 5 floors underground. If they were all Sentinel robots, they would be thousands of Sentry robots. If the Trask industry is allowed to develop, it is unimaginable. With the help of his supervision, Charles saw small signs on the distant pillars. This is the 6th generation of Sentinel robots. Good thing it's not X. The X-Sentinel robot is the Sentinel robot in the movie, Mutants, Reverse the Future. Its terrifying combat effectiveness is already very close to the level of Ninglu. Hey guys, it's not a good habit to run into other people's homes and wreak havoc. Just as Charles and they were about to destroy the Sentinel robot, the voice of the Avengers came from behind. Thor shook the hammer in his hand, finding that no one was paying attention to him, and gave Steve a somewhat embarrassed look. Did you say yes or no, buddy? Steve nodded. Tonight mutants are indeed going too far. Quote. He didn't say anything about the San Francisco Bay attack. Because Worthington's lab uses the serum of mutant children to create the so-called mutant antidote, Steve is very upset about this. Captain Rogers, look at these big guys behind us, do you call this too much? SHIELD and Trask Industries are trying to exterminate mutants. We just responded. If mutants want to go the extra mile, trust me, we can do well. Charles pointed to the Sentinel robot behind him and said. Steve looked over Charles and them, his expression not very good. Since awakening, he had never hated SHIELD as much as he did today. Because SHIELD was created by Carter, he chose to do things for SHIELD. But now SHIELD. It seems that when the symbol of the dove of peace becomes a war eagle, something is already wrong. The necessary means of war deterrence, this is like a wooden bomb, I don't think there is anything wrong with that. If you were honest, nothing would have happened. Quote. Tony Stark said. He and Steve have two very different views. However, Charles was not prepared to convince them from the beginning. At Charles's signal, Reva took the lead in attacking, and her sonic attack instantly enveloped the Avengers. Steve subconsciously raised the 17 shield. Vibranium shields also have a good effect on sound waves. Tony's left hand was raised, and a sonic transmitter appeared on his wrist, emitting back at the same sonic frequency, and the two sonic waves cancelled each other out in midair. Emma, the White Queen, tried it and tried to control the Avengers with telepathy, but found that it didn't work at all, and everyone wore the same mind-shielding helmet as Magneto. This made her face ugly, and she already knew the mercenaries who had just let Charles leave the base. It's used against the Avengers. Charles, they have mind shield helmets. Emma said. In this way, the combat power on their side is obviously not enough. Charles wasn't worried. After all, you can level them on your own. But there is no need to do this. As long as the Avengers don't deal with mutants, they are still good Avengers. Without Tony Stark, the world may or may not have Ultron. Whether or not there is Ultron is not important to Charles. The important thing is how to put yourself in a reasonable position when the crisis comes. So the Avengers are still very necessary. In Charles's plan, after this evening, the Sentry robot will no longer exist. SHIELD and the Security Council will also completely lose the confidence to fight the independent kingdom of mutants. Mutants and humans will have peace for a long time. As for how it will develop in the future, shut yourself up. At this time, everyone from Xavier Genius Junior School arrived at the Toronto base. The Hellfire Club, which is on the inferior side, ushered in a strong helping hand. Laser Eye Scott put one hand on the side of his glasses, and the dark red ray full of destructive aura shot towards Thor, the god of thunder. Thor blocked the ray with a hammer, but his body was pushed back by the ray and slowly retreated. Who can stop this laser-eyed guy? Roar. Dr. Banner transforms into the Hulk, and he furiously rushes towards the laser eye. Steel Lux stands in front of the laser eye. But he was punched in the face by the Hulk. It seems that the grievances of fighting with mutants during the day are all vented on Steel. When Charles saw this picture, he didn't think of a word in his heart. Whether people or ghosts are on display, only Steel people are being beaten. That seems to be the case. The battle at Xavier's Genius Junior School was hated as a sandbag. Now beaten by the furious Hulk again. However, Steel Lux is still very stubborn. He punched the Hulk with his head, and saw that he grabbed the Hulk's arm with both hands, and dropped the Hulk to the ground with an over-the-shoulder fall. It doesn't hurt much, it's extremely insulting. This one really made the Hulk hairy. The Hulk completely set his sights on Steel, grabbed him by the neck, and dragged him directly to the ground and beat him wildly. Hawkeye Patton shoots 3 arrows at Laser Eye in succession, ready to relieve Thor's pressure, but Emma the White Queen turns into a diamond body and helps Laser Eye block the arrow. Body of Diamonds, this is one of Emma's abilities. She can switch between human and diamond forms. In human form, Emma has powerful telepathic abilities. In diamond form, Emma's body has the same strength as diamond, is almost indestructible, and is immune to mind control. I didn't shoot 3 arrows. Barton glanced up. Emma then looked and saw that in the ceiling directly above them, a flashing red arrow pierced into the concrete. Bang! The arrow exploded and a large chunk of concrete fell down. Jean propped her hands upwards, and under the control of her mental power, fell to the ceiling without hitting anyone. The corners of Barton's mouth twitched. I don't like mutant abilities, which makes my previous combat experience start to fall behind. Barton, listen to me, the weak complain about the environment, the strong adapt to the environment. Tony's voice came from inside Iron Man's helmet. Although he was a comrade in arms, Patton still wanted to beat him up. No wonder polls show that more than 60% of people throughout Eagle Sauce don't like Tony Stark. If he weren't Iron Man, that number would be 80%. If he wasn't that rich, it would be 99.8%. I saw that the thrusters on Tony's suit were activated, allowing him to move at a speed of Mach 8 in an instant, and he raised the hand cannon in his right hand, ready to give Scott and the others a shot. I never thought that a large ice wall in front of me would appear suddenly from scratch. He hit the ice wall right on. This Tony hit the 7 meets, the suit fell on the ground several times before stopping, and a hand cannon was also fired indiscriminately at the sentry robot. Tantra. Ice boy, if we win, I will definitely buy you a catering truck and let you make Ice American for the whole country for free. Quote. Barton, you're right, I hate mutants. In response to Tony's complaints, Barton spread his hands. Steve clenched his shield and said, they're not easy opponents, let's go together. Quote. Thor pressed the hammer hard against the hammer and deflected the laser of the laser eye to the side, and then he joined the charging camp. Charles asked Bishop Lucas to stay with them to deal with the Avengers. Go to the bottom of the base alone. Because to control so many Sentinel robots to give instructions, there must be a separate local area network mastermind, perhaps choosing a self-destruct program. Otherwise, it is still more troublesome to destroy them one by one. Charles, however, underestimated the Trask industry. Trasker Industries began researching mutants in the 60s. In a sense, they know mutants better than mutants. The first prototype of the Sentinel robot can identify mutants who have awakened X from the crowd. When Charles walked to the 3rd basement level, the system scans to mutants entering. All the Sentinel robots at the Toronto base were directly activated. In Trask Industries' preset program, the Sentinel robot has only one mission, and that is to destroy the mutants in the world. In this regard, Charles had only one word in his heart. Gone. The first underground level of the base, where everyone and the Avengers are fighting. Suddenly, all the Sentinel robot eyes glowed red. Click, click, click. The sound was endless, the sentry robots behind and the entire factory connection buckles opened, and all the sentry robots resumed their actions. How did these robots start? Beast Hank said, stunned. A sense of ominousness welled up. Charles won't be in danger. Little fan Sister Chin, of course, is most concerned about Charles. As soon as he saw the Sentinel robot starting, his first reaction was not how to deal with these iron pimples, but to save Charles. Emma recovered from the diamond form to the form and said, it's okay, I can feel Charles, he's fine, he's not hurt. 3 inches. In fact, Jean also has a strong telepathic ability, but if you care, you will be chaotic. When listening to Emma's words, Jean's psychic power also discovered the lower level Charles. Tricurved wing building. Fury lit a cigar, which he gently twirled between his fingers. In fact, he is not in the habit of smoking cigars. Only when the mood is not calm, he likes to light one. The smell of burning cigars can keep him calm. Chief, those Sentinel robots are activated. Coulson's call came to Fury. Fury took a deep breath and pressed the cigar into the ashtray, the first good news he had heard this evening. I knew that Trask 3 behaved like Stark, a complete playboy. But after all, he inherited the blood of Bolivar, and he left behind in the secret base in Toronto. Quote. Trask 3, the battle against Trask Industries by the Imatwi mutants has just begun. The actual ruler, who holds hundreds of billions of assets in Trask's industry, died on the belly of a certain woman. But Trask 3 died though. It does not affect the Sentinel plan of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Trask Industries. Sentinel robots can kill all the people in the Hellfire Club and the Mutant Academy, so that the Insight plan can be postponed until tomorrow. Fury said silently. Because of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Insight plan, 3 Sky aircraft carriers were launched, requiring the authorization of the Security Council members. The chaos caused by mutants made Fury plan ahead of time. He still lacks the mandates of 3 commissioners. Without full authorization, Fury, as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., can also order 3 sky carriers to take off. However, if an order is given that violates the procedure, it may be impeached by the Security Council afterwards. Coupled with the mess made by the mutants now, this will make him leave the position of S.H.I.E.L.D. director. A brilliant streamer crosses the night sky. Using shining fruit, Charles appears above the Toronto base as the Flash Man. At this point, with the Sentinel robot starting, the battlefield has moved from the basement level to the ground. Because of the abilities of Stormgirl, Laser Eye, Iceman Poppy and others, they are not suitable for fighting in small spaces. Back on the ground, Storm summoned huge thunderclouds and storms. Lightning with a thick trunk hits the Sentry robot. Such an attack made Tony's eyelids jump wildly when he saw it. I didn't expect the white-haired lady to be so fierce. However, the Sentinel robot absorbed the energy of the thunder and lightning, and then transformed into a shockwave to attack the mutants present. Poppy the Iceman creates an ice wall, which is shattered by energy, and both he and John the Burning Man are shaken out. Bishop Lucas absorbed the shock wave. He said to Storm Girl, "Stop your ability first, these robots use the same ability as me, I can absorb all energy attacks, and then convert the energy into shockwaves and shields." Quote. His ability is similar to Black Emperor Sebastian's energy absorption. But it is not as domineering as energy absorption. Bishop Lucas can only absorb pure energy attacks, then store the energy and convert it into shockwaves or shields. And the Black Emperor's energy absorption can absorb including but not limited to thermal weapons, kinetic energy, potential energy in addition to direct use. You can also convert and strengthen your lifespan, strength, speed, reaction speed, etc. Hearing this, the Storm Girl dispersed the thundercloud storm. This is troublesome. Is it only possible to use physical attacks against the Sentinel robots of Trask Industries? In fact, the effect is not very good. Hank the Beast pounced on a Sentry robot, biting, punching and kicking, seeing that it could inflict some damage on the Sentry robot. However, none of these injuries are fatal. And the Sentinel robot has a self-healing function. Moreover, there are thousands of Sentinel robots, they don't have thousands of beasts. The Flash Man Charles turned into fell from the sky. Faced with so many Sentinel robots, he did not use group attacks such as the 8-foot Chonguyu. Destruction at the highest end, only the simplest tricks are required. Speed and power are enough. With the ability to move at the speed of light and the power of Dachau, Charles recklessly mounted a Sentinel robot that wanted to kill Wendell. Wendell raised his hand, looking powerless and desperate in the face of the powerful Sentry robot. Rumble. At this moment, the Sentinel robot exploded into a firework. Then the second, the third, the fourth. The speed is so fast that even one person is too late to follow the number. In the distance, Coulson saw this scene and looked panicked, and he hurriedly contacted Fury. Flash Man. You say the Flash Man showed up at the Toronto base and is destroying the Sentinel robots. Quote. Ma ya fac. I knew that Flash Man was a mutant, and let Thor find a way to stop him. Quote. Fury said angrily. He felt that it must be the ability of the Flash Man to restrain the Sentinel robot. Trask 3 had submitted a report to S.H.I.E.L.D. about the flaws in the 6th-generation Sentinel robot. Nanorobot research has fallen into a bottleneck, and Sentinel robots are self-healing based on Wolverine's ability to heal themselves, which cannot really be realized. Therefore, what Sentinel robots are most afraid of at the moment is pure physical damage. The ability to self-repair can't keep up. It is precisely this flaw. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Strack Industries have been working on hidden Sentinel robots. Even the huge Hellfire Club didn't notice any clues. Coulson told Thor about Fury's arrangements. Thor smacked his lips. The Black Brine of S.H.I.E.L.D. will really arrange things for him. However, as the Prince of Asgard, the heir to the throne, Toll Odinson, has never known what recognition is. He smashed the Meow Hammer in his hand at Charles. This speed is just right, and as Charles is about to destroy the 781st Sentinel robot, the Meow Hammer appears at the location of his left temple. Charles raised his hand to grab the hammer. Seeing this, Thor's mouth involuntarily grinned. The Meow Hammer has Odin's spell on it, and no one can pick it up unless they are truly qualified. Apart from himself, who in the 9 kingdoms is still qualified. The next moment, Thor's smile froze on his face, and he couldn't laugh anymore. Tantra. I saw that the Flash Man easily caught the Meow Hammer, and the relaxed look, like the spell on the Meow Hammer did not take effect. A circle of incantations appeared on the actual hammer. This is Odin's spell. Not a qualified person to pick up a Mjolnir. But in the movie, Thor 3, Hela crushed the hammer. Now Charles is stronger than Hela, let alone crush the hammer, even if the hammer is rubbed into ash. But he didn't. Thor, Prince of Asgard, you should not intervene in the dispute between humans and mutants on Earth. Charles's voice paused. As punishment, I will take your Mjolnir. It won't work for you anyway. For Charles, who knows the development of the plot, after the Dark Elves of Thor 2, Hela comes online, and this hammer is scrapped. Then it's time to find the Dwarf King and craft the Storm Tomahawk. So it's better to give it to yourself. Mjolnir created an artifact of the goddess Thor. Charles thought he could give the hammer to Gwen as a Valentine's Day gift. After all, Valentine's Day is coming, isn't it? Charles did not discuss this matter with Thor, as if to declare ownership of the hammer, only to see him throw the hammer. Boom. After smashing 3 Sentinel robots, the hammer flew back into Charles. Thor opened his palm, intending to shout back the Meow Hammer, but it turned out to be in vain. In the distance, Coulson didn't know how to report to Fury. Simply made a video call over. He pointed the mobile phone camera at the battlefield in midair and said, "Director, not only can Thor defeat the Flash Man, but even Mjolnir has been snatched away." Quote. Most of the Sentinel robots have been destroyed. I feel that the remaining robots will not last long. Do you want Captain Rogers to evacuate? Coulson is a fan of Team America, and naturally does not want to see Team America and others, glorious, here. Fortunately, the Flash Man had no intention of killing. But when he finishes solving the Sentinel robot, what kind of situation it is, then it is unknown. Although the Flash Man confiscated Mjolnir, it doesn't look like he's going to kill Thor. But don't forget that behind Thor stands Odin, the God King of Asgard. Behind them there is only one chief who is similar to Odin on the one-eyed top. Fury closed his only remaining eye, his eyelids trembled slightly, and said, "Let Tony and Captain Rogers retreat. The Flash Man's threat is beyond my expectations, maybe she needs to come back." Quote. Who, she, Fury was talking about, Coulson didn't know. Anyway, if the director doesn't want to say it, just don't ask. Otherwise, how could he be a henchman of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? After Fury gives the evacuation order, Charles solves the last sentry robot. A hammer was smashed to scrap. With and without weapons in hand, the feeling is still different. Forgot to try the effect of the Tiancong Cloud Sword. I don't know if it's as cool to use as a physical weapon. If it doesn't work, should I also go to the Dwarf King to build a weapon? Quote. Charles muttered in his heart. As for the little hammer of Mjolnir, he didn't like it very much. When using it, you always think of Sledgehammer 80, Small Hammer 40. Seeing the Avengers leave in a Coon-style fighter, Charles ignored them. Without the Sentinel robot, without the Avengers, all that's left is the finishing touches. Wipe this base off the world once and for all. Including the sentry robots that were hammered by him, there is no dregs left. What about more than 1,000 Sentinel robots? Charles could not guarantee how completely it would be destroyed. Therefore, the best thing to do is to melt it all. For example, pack it and throw it into the sun. Silver Super Template allows Charles to fly in the universe. Even if he makes a round trip from the Earth to the Sun, it won't take long to break in. Just as Charles was about to clean up the garbage, a strong pressure came. A human figure with boiling photon fluctuations around him rushed towards Charles. This figure doesn't say much. After determining Charles's status, it seemed that physical attacks would be difficult to work with. The strong light ignited above this man's fist exploded directly. Charles dissolved the non-physical light form and responded to this super attack with energy absorption. After Captain Marvel Carol entered the atmosphere, S.H.I.E.L.D. radar picked up on this powerful fluctuation. And locate the destination of this fluctuation. It is the base of Strack Industries in Toronto. Carol has finally arrived. Fury asked people to bring up satellite footage of the Toronto base, and he involuntarily clenched his fists. If Carol can win the Flash Man, humanity has not yet failed. Project Insight can eliminate most of the mutants, and the remaining small part, with Carol around, even Magneto cannot pose a threat. And the mutant antidote, that special mutant named Jimmy, is still in the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury replayed. Surely, there is still a chance for a headwind turnaround. He still believes in Carol's strength. You know, Carol can propel a planet through the universe. The only regrettable point. If Carol had arrived on Earth earlier, those Sentinel robots would have remained. Even if it's just partially. It can also greatly increase the power of S.H.I.E.L.D. At the Toronto base, Captain Marvel Carol directly attacked Charles with an energy attack without saying a word. Charles lifts the form of light. Also at this moment, the sun really appeared in the S.H.I.E.L.D. satellite video. Fury's one-eyed eyes were so wide that they almost cracked. Charles. He made an incredulous sound. A Flash man who can fly at the speed of light. Professor X with the strongest brain in the world. At this moment, the different 127 images of these two people overlapped in Fury's eyes. If you don't see it with your own eyes. Fury couldn't believe that Charles was the Flashman who threatened him with how long it would take to kill the population of Washington. I thought there was an ugly monster behind that light. Carol said. It shows that she recognizes Charles's appearance. Ching Ben is a good person, but what a thief. Of course. Carol couldn't say such poetic words. She just felt sorry. If it weren't for the opposing positions, maybe they could drink together, play poker or something. Are you sure you want to go to war on Earth? Charles said to Carol, who was once again in a fighting stance. Carol's strength can at least be counted as sub-Heavenly Father. Or the weaker gear in the Heavenly Father level. But no matter how you calculate it, it exceeds the current level of the Avengers. At the time of the invasion of New York by the Zetori, Fury didn't even intend to use this whole card. From this, you can see Carol's strength. The Zeteri who made the Avengers tired of coping with, in Fury's eyes, was not worth sending Carol at all. So, if Charles and Carol had fought on Earth, the damage would be hard to measure. I thought you wouldn't survive in outer space. It seems that the mutants on Earth have indeed appeared a wonderful existence, no wonder Fury wants me back. Quote. Carol said. She traveled in the universe and saw many beings who could be called the overlords of the universe. Even those cosmic overlords, such as Ronan the Bibe Controller, Ebony Throat and the like, cannot survive in outer space. Charles laughed, then flew vertically, and in less than a second he rushed out of the atmosphere. Fortunately, I have a silver supermodel. Silver Chow comes with a biological force field. Otherwise, the moment it rushes out of the atmosphere, the clothes on the body will be burned into flying ash. Carol followed and came to Charles. She frowned. Charles's speed just now had scared her a little. That speed cannot be measured in Mach, as a unit, which is directly the speed of light. Flying at the speed of light. She has never heard of anyone in the universe who can move at the speed of light on their own. But it's not all about speed. Carol burned with photon aura all around, and she slammed a punch at Charles, powerful enough to destroy the Kree's main ship. Charles did not dodge or dodge, and absorbed the powerful kinetic energy of this punch with energy absorption. Then he unleashed his power, and at the same time superimposed his powerful punch. Rumble. Carol was shot away like a shooting star. The body was directly smashed on the moon from outside the ground, and a crater collapsed by her. I don't know if there are Inhumans on the moon. Charles descended on the surface of the moon, and the ability of telepathy swept over, and suddenly several similar psychic forces were resisting him. Apparently there is an Inhuman kingdom on the moon. Speaking of Inhuman abilities and mutant abilities, there are similarities. Because the Kree's study of the Inhumans is also based on the infinite possibilities of X causes. King, two powerful beings appeared on the Yang side of the moon. One of them also has strong psychic power. He has just spied our kingdom. Inhuman Palace, an Inhuman elder said to Black Bolt. Black Bolt nodded and remained silent. His ability prevents him from making a sound. Once a sound is made, even the slightest sound wave is terrifyingly lethal. Queen Medusa said, those two are at war, it looks like they will leave the moon, then it has nothing to do with us. Quote. Medusa sees Charles and Carol in the mirror of an Inhuman manifestation. And secretly remember them in their hearts. These two people are not known how many times stronger than the humans they have learned. There is a voice among the Inhumans. It is to return to Earth from the moon and destroy all humans on Earth with the fog of Terrigen. Today's scene will surely change the naive thinking of those people. With another punch, Charles knocked Carol off the moon. So as not to accidentally destroy the moon and destroy the Inhumans. Carol cursed a lot of words beginning with F in her mouth. She has always been used to solving problems with her fists. And it's always a bad way. Both the Kree, the Hea, and the Sovlans are very much in recognition of this. Today she discovered for the first time that her usual method had failed. Can't beat I really can't beat it this time. Speed is crushed, power is crushed. And Charles can also use a special ability to absorb all the damage she causes. That is, Carol. In the case of the Marvel world, where most of the capable people attack high and defend low, they have long been beaten into dust by Charles. I think we can talk. The two came to Jupiter on the battlefield, and Carol shook her confused head and made a stop gesture with one hand. Charles felt like he was absorbing the sun's rays in the universe, his cells were cheering, and his strength was growing with each passing moment. He said slowly, according to the tradition of Hell's Kitchen, this is called negotiation. Carol flew up again from Jupiter and slammed into the asteroid belt. Carol, who is in this state, is not Charles's opponent at all. Unless it's a double star team. Seriously, I don't know about SHIELD's plan for mutants, I can talk to Fury about it. Carol took another punch. The Earth is huge, and humans and mutants can coexist peacefully, or mutants can migrate to the universe. Hook up. The chattering Carol flew again. But that didn't affect Carol's determination to move Charles. I know a lot of friends, and it's no problem for me to go to the Kree Empire to borrow a Star Capital ship. Right swing fist. Carol continued to fly. Insight plan. Fury has an insight plan that kills 95% of the mutants on Earth. I can go stop him. Quote. Carol exclaimed. She was afraid of being killed directly by Charles. Charles crossed his fingers and clenched his fists and slammed into Carol's head. This time instead of taking off, Carol rolled down at 360 degrees and returned to Jupiter again. And smashed two peaks of Jupiter. Carol, who crawled out of the dust, looked loveless. Why don't you talk? Charles looked at her condescendingly. I don't talk anymore, it's not interesting to fight. Carol's eyes bulged like an angry frog. Project Insight I know, I've got Eric and Orlo to deal with them. I can't save mutants around the world, I can only save those I know, and how much others can survive depends on their creation. Charles said. Maha Fakeman's behavior of digging his own grave, Charles still likes to hear about it. As for taking the lives of many mutants, then there is no way. Fighting for the right of mutants to survive is granted. As for Charles, he only cares about the people around him and his students. Lao Wan's mutant independent kingdom, take care of it properly. SHIELD's insight plan, to put it bluntly, is to use 3 air carriers for precise positioning strikes. Before leaving Earth, Charles had informed them with his psychic abilities. Wakanda has a defensive barrier. As for the school, Clarice will bring them back to Xavier Genius Junior School. Whether it is Jean's mental barrier, or the school's underground base, it can block the thermal weapon strike. In the 3 curved wing building, Fury personally pressed the button for the sky carrier to take off. The river outside the building separated, and 3 sky aircraft carriers rose into the sky under the gaze of countless people in Washington. When the sky carrier reaches the designated altitude, SHIELD's insight plan can be executed. The algorithm of the insight plan can find out all the people who have harmed the world, or currently harming the world, and will harm the world in the future through genetic comparison, and carry out precise strikes. Thus eliminating at the root all those who are harmful to the world. Back in Washington, the Avengers saw 3 sky aircraft carriers slowly taking off. Disembarking from the Coon fighter, Barton said, "Is this to attack the mutant independent kingdom?" Quote. I thought SHIELD's sky carrier crashed during the battle with the Chitauri. Fury repaired the damaged one and rebuilt 2, which is not enough with SHIELD's budget alone, so those 2 sky carriers have, one should be mine. Tony's tone was full of money. But your director won't let me go to the top of the party, and he wants me to be a technical consultant for the sky aircraft carrier. I bet his heart is darker than that of capitalists like us. Steve frowned. Does the Remlia Star rescue that Natasha and I performed not long ago have anything to do with this sky carrier? Quote. SHIELD uses the steamer Remlia. Secret launch of satellites on the high seas. However, the ship was hijacked by a group of pirates. Steve, Natasha, and Crossbone, among others, are responsible for rescuing the hostages. The reason why Steve asked this question was because the actions of the Remlia star were not recorded in the SHIELD operational file. This is perverse. Tony looked at the big guy in the sky and nodded. Captain, you are not as sensitive to some things as a soldier. The satellites launched by the Remlia star ship are the most critical link before the InSight program. Project InSight. Dr. Banner asked. Seeing that the Sky aircraft carrier had taken off, Tony had nothing to hide, and said, "It is to use one of the most advanced algorithms of SHIELD to find out the people who harm the world in advance and accurately locate and eliminate them. This is called strangling danger in the cradle." Quote. Steve's face was ugly. You destroy ordinary people who have not yet sinned. Tony was unhappy with this statement. Captain Rogers, it is necessary for me to correct your two mistakes. First, they are not ordinary people. Can people who have the ability to endanger the world be considered ordinary people? Second, I don't think this should be called extermination. This is a plan of salvation. Our early intervention to kill a bad guy can save hundreds or thousands of people in the future. Quote. Why do we always have to wait for something bad to happen before we make amends? So you and Fury made them and pointed guns at the world to do what you call protection. This is not freedom and protection, this is fear. Quote. Steve said angrily. Whatever you say, this is the real world, we can't do it all. Tony looked unconcerned. Steve pointed at Tony. Humans shouldn't hold God's power, it will only cause disaster. Quote. God. My God, so this is an old antique that has been sleeping for 70 years. God created mankind, but humans bury God, and only technology is the God of this world. Quote. We use quantum-level sophisticated threat analysis, which is more reliable than God judging whether a person is good or bad. Being pointed at the nose made Tony very upset. It doesn't matter if he's Stark, or Iron Man. Few people in the world could point to his nose and speak to him. Steve, who was silent for a while, said, if the current SHIELD is like this, I choose to quit. Quote. Yes. Steve was completely disheartened by SHIELD. Whether it's the mutant antidote thing, or InSight plan. SHIELD's so-called justice was unacceptable to Steve. He missed the roaring commando 70 years ago. It was much simpler then than it is now. Seeing Steve drop the headset and turn away, Tony clenched his fists angrily. If any of you else feel that there is a problem with the InSight plan, you can leave the team together now. The Avengers are not a bunch of utopian guardians. Quote. Barton and Natasha looked at each other. They were originally SHIELD agents. And the level is high. Learn something about the dark side of SHIELD. So it won't be as unreceptive to the InSight program as Steve did. Thor, as Prince of Asgard, is a bystander. Not so empathetic. Dr. Banner smiled wryly. He would love to leave the team. Question, will SHIELD let the Hulk run around outside? Fury learns that Captain America Steve has left the Avengers, and his expression has not changed. Captain Rogers is a man of high moral character. But this is only for propaganda. He represents Eagle Sauce's justice, freedom, fearlessness, nobility, and everything else. But what the real Eagle Sauce looks like, who does not know? Under the light of propaganda, countless conspiracies run. Seriously. Eagle Sauce is not worthy of Captain Rogers' good character. Just as Fury sighed, Hill contacted him, and his voice was extremely urgent. Fury, listen to me, stop the Sky Carrier from taking off immediately. I'm at the site of the Science Strategy Core, where there is an underground base, and the algorithm for the InSight plan came from Dr. Zora the Hydra. The InSight plan will destroy all Hydra's enemies, this is Hydra's conspiracy. Hill's words were like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, thundering in Fury's heart. In the end, the king of agents. After Fury was shocked, he immediately asked the Sky Carrier to land. He couldn't help but ask how Hill knew this. Of course, after notifying the 3 Sky Carriers, Fury still had optimistic thoughts in his heart. But when his news was lost, Fury completely understood that the 3 Sky Carriers had been taken over by Hydra. Ma ya fuck. Tony, you guys immediately block the InSight plan and prevent the Sky Carrier from reaching the designated location. The Sky Carrier has been taken over by Hydra, and we need to stop Hydra's conspiracy. Fury's voice appeared in the Avengers' headsets. Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha looked odd. Steve was right. Humans should not hold the power of God. Because God has no selfish heart, but the moral level of man does not allow it. I just didn't expect the disaster to come so quickly. Hydra. Aren't those guys exterminated for decades? Quote. Tony said. Now is not the time to say this. First stop the sky carriers from reaching the designated location, and destroy them if necessary. Tantra. Do you know how much that big guy is? Quote. Tony grumbled, but still wearing an Iron Man helmet, he grabbed Dr. Banner and soared into the sky, ready to throw Dr. Banner onto one of the sky carriers. I know, Hydra, I'll cut off all 9 of their heads. This Global Insight program. In the end, it evolved into a battle between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Because of the luxurious lineup of Tony the Iron Man, Thor, Dr. Banner the Hulk, Natasha the Black Widow and Hawkeye Patton, the plan for the rise of Hydra is still in the womb. This should be the closest they have come to success. The weapons system of one of the sky carriers has been fully deployed. At the last critical moment, it was dismantled into a pile of scrap iron by the Hulk. Afterwards, Fury leads the agents in the purge. There was a fierce exchange of fire between the Tricurved Wing building and Alexander Pierce's men. This exchange of fire did not only blow up the 3 Curved Wing building, including the 4 blocks around the 3 Curved Wing building, all of them were affected to varying degrees. The chaos in S.H.I.E.L.D. lasted until dawn the next day. When Carol returned to Earth, he saw Fury sitting in the ruins, like a 10-year-old Fury. Fury smoked while staring blankly at everything around him. Fury, are you trying to destroy Washington? Fury thought that Carol would comfort herself, but she didn't expect to come up with such a sentence, which hurt him a lot. What about Charles? Did you kill him? This time it was Carol's turn to get injured. Kill X Grant. It's good if I wasn't killed by him. Of course, Carol didn't want to be so embarrassed about herself. No, none of us can help anyone. I want to persuade you to reconcile S.H.I.E.L.D. and the mutants. Then it won't be needed. Fury stood up and patted the dust on his body. For a long time to come, S.H.I.E.L.D. will go underground. You can tell Charles, and I think the United Nations should recognize the sovereignty of the mutant independent kingdom. Quote. After that, Fury got into a car and left the place. It didn't take a while. The FBI and CIA combined to seal off the area and arrest the remaining S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. However, most of the agents with level 6 or higher permissions have already been evacuated in advance. Near the neighborhood, Natasha helped Steve settle a group of children. This is a child from a nearby boarding school. The exchange of fire between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra reached the school, but Steve, who had left, returned to save the children. This should be the justice that Captain America Steve has done. Natasha, the FBI and CIA are hunting down S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Where are you going? Steve asked. Tony has a base in New York that will be the new base for the Avengers. Although it may not be useful, I still want to advise you if you want to come together. Because Steve, you may also be on the wanted list. Natasha gets on a black motorcycle and she'll drive all the way to New York. As S.H.I.E.L.D.'s deadliest agent. Natasha was confident that no one could catch her. That's why she didn't evacuate with Tony, Barton and others, but chose to persuade the American team at the end. Steve shook his head just as Natasha expected. I think I can take a look at Eagle Sauce. I've been sleeping in the ice for 70 years, and I don't want to be called an antique. Steve said. Shortly after waking up, the Zeteri invaded New York. Then came the endless missions of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. was created by Carter. So he was willing to fight for S.H.I.E.L.D., even if he gave everything he had. But S.H.I.E.L.D. let him down too much. He shouldn't be fighting for S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. Steve, who has lost his shackles and responsibilities, feels lost, so he prepares to travel in Eagle Sauce for a while. Natasha respected Steve's decision. I guess your trip will be wonderful. After all, the FBI and the CIA may be holding onto it, he said. Quote. Steve, if you really don't have a place to go, I think Hell's Kitchen is okay, and you might be able to become friends with Charles. You are all people of high moral character. Quote. Thinking of Charles asking Gwen to be a vigilante again, and helping to catch Dr. Connors, the Lizard Man. Charles's character needs no question. Everything Charles has done so far is just for mutants. In addition to the question of position, Charles also deserves respect. Steve nodded. I listened to Natasha's words. X awarded Charles Xavier. It seems that Natasha has a high opinion of him, and hearing that he is still a psychiatrist makes Steve look forward to talking to him even more. Because the psychologist hired by S.H.I.E.L.D. is really rotten. At this time, in the Deep Universe. Because of the rotten Insight plan, Charles was given a gold chest. After opening, it is a juvenile, Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla, can this also be considered Godzilla? Charles questioned. Of course. There is no second person in the universe who listens to him, he just talks to himself. What is Space Godzilla? This thing just looks like Godzilla, and Godzilla is not the same in construction. Space Godzilla is mutated from meteorites and G cells. It can absorb cosmic rays to grow. Adult Space Godzilla can reach a height of 200 meters, weigh 780,000 tons, and has the ability to destroy planets. Now the juvenile Space Godzilla looks like a little stone monster, cute and stupid. There is no Godzilla domineering feeling at all. It saw Charles for the first time, and because of the rotten system, it had already identified Charles as its own relative, and rubbed it on Charles. This is as clingy as a puppet cat. At this moment, Charles's telepathy discovered that there was an escape pod drifting in the universe. Inside the escape pod were 4 already faint psychic fluctuations. Isn't this a rocket raccoon? Oh. There are also otter Layla, walrus tusks, rabbit boards, good guys, these 4 little guys escaped from the supreme evolution. Quote. Charles smiled warmly and flew directly to the escape pod. The Xavier Genius Junior School in the early morning is full of lazy atmosphere. Because the winter vacation has not yet passed, the school has no requirements for work and rest time, and most students are still in bed. Charles dragged an escape pod to the school. Hearing the movement of the Storm Girl, the laser eyes all came to the grass, except for Steel Lux, who was crushed by the Hulk yesterday night. Charles, did you go to space to pick up garbage? Storm continues to unleash her poisonous tongue abilities. Look at this escape pod, it's like a big bread that has been baked. Is this an escape from the Battle of Endor? From Star Wars campaign to destroy Death Star 2. Closing parenthesis. Of course. Poisonous tongue to poisonous tongue. When she saw Charles open the escape pod and rescue the 4 little ones inside, Storm Girl quickly instructed Hank to vacate a dormitory to come out. Charles touched it with his hand and found that the rocket raccoons were mainly hypothermia. Presumably, during the escape, the survival support system of the escape pod was destroyed. Then the powertrain was also hit. They can only drift aimlessly in the universe. Fortunately, they drifted into the solar system and were discovered by Charles. My God, who made them like this? Jean's hand rests on the mechanical leg of the rabbit board, which is a spider-like mechanical limb. You can imagine how cruel the 4 little guys were treated. Because many mutants have also been reduced to experimental subjects. Mutants empathize with such things. A mad scientist. Charles said. Is Supreme Evolution a scientist? Charles also doesn't know. 480, crazy anyway is real. He needs at least 3 courses of psychotherapy. Charles, you robbed a mad scientist from outer space and robbed his experimental products, will that scientist find Earth? Laser Eyes, who helped put the 4 little ones on the stretcher, asked. This is the difference between the personalities of each person in the academy. Laser Eye Scott always has a sense of mission and responsibility, and he thinks about problems from the angle, that's it. So, once the captain of the ex-police field squad, it has always been Scott. As long as the task is assigned to him, he can always complete it well. The piano on the other side is sensual. She hated turning the 4 little ones into such mad scientists. If it is possible to meet, Jean would make him go through the pain that the 4 little ones endured. Storm Girl will always be school-oriented. She turned her head to see the many students lying on their stomachs on the window, looking at the lawn, and said with her hands on her forehead, let me think about how I should explain to the students that their principal Xavier has become a space junk. Quote. Charles ignored Storm Girl and said to Laser Eye, if there are aliens threatening Earth, I think purple aliens may be more troublesome than crazy scientists. Quote. Charles, don't you like purple? Clarice, who had just opened a portal here, pulled a little face and said. Because part of her hair is purple. Should she dye her hair? But her eyes are also purple. In the academy, you want to call me the principal, or the president of Xavier, I just don't like purple sweet potatoes. Charles said. Honestly, purple sweet potatoes are still quite delicious. I mainly don't like purple potato essence. And fool it, cabbage juice. Sunlight slipped in through the window and spilled on the four little ones on the bed. The rocket raccoon's eyelids first trembled twice, and then it slowly opened, blocking the sunlight in front of it with one hand. After a while, it adapts to the environment of the room. Seeing Lyra lying on the other beds, teeth and floor, Rocket breathed a sigh of relief. Then it puts a bench under the windowsill and jumps on the bench itself so that it can see the scene outside the window. The sky is clear blue, white like clouds like cotton. The green grass, there are still many children playing on it, and there are special people who maintain the lawn in a way that it does not understand. Is this the new world? Rocket muttered. It's like the beautiful home that Supreme Evolution tells it about. Everything here is like a dream. No, we're in the escape pod and those people are still chasing us. I'm going to cheer up. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to escape with everyone. Quote. The rocket kept slapping himself in order to wake himself up. It remembers that the escaped pod's life support system was damaged. That causes them to lose temperature quickly. As soon as it wakes up, it can fix it. It promised its partners that it would save them. But I couldn't wake up. Rocket fell to his knees and let out a howl. At this moment, the walrus Tooth also woke up slowly, and it looked at the rocket in puzzlement. Rocket, what are you doing? Tooth. Rocket sees Tooth and pounces on Tooth to give Tooth a hug. It feels like the big guy is dead. It's just a dream of my own. So, Rocket still cried very painfully. Even the teeth were infected by its sadness, but the mechanical prosthetic eyes made it impossible to shed tears like a rocket. Charles heard the sound of rockets and pushed the door in from the next office. Then I saw this touching scene. You can cry a little longer, I'll come back later. Charles said. For example, after the four little ones wake up. Rocket saw a stranger, like a wary cat, his hair standing up, grinning at Charles. Is this your attitude towards lifesavers? Charles was speechless, his fingers slicked slightly, and an awakening spell was released. Previously, he only used the healing charm, not the awakening charm. Since the rocket and the tooth naturally woke up, then simply wake up. Under Charles's magic, Otter Layla and Rabbit Floor also woke up, and they looked at everything around them blankly. Overall, Otter Layla looks like an elegant lady. Bunny Floor is a naughty little kid. Walrus Tusks have a strong personality. None of them are as aggressive as rockets. Supreme Evolution intends to create a peaceful creature, and the rocket raccoon is a special product made at a special point in time. Its creativity surpasses Supreme Evolution. When Charles told them what happened in space, it only took a while for the four to take effect. So we didn't die. You saved us. This place is beautiful as the new world is called Earth. The floor wants to go out. The floor wants to go out. Can we hang out? I'm hungry. Can I eat? You can fly through the universe on your own. The four little ones asked a bunch of questions. These questions are simply more than the end-of-year exam questions for younger students. Charles had to interrupt them. Ask one question per person, think about your questions and ask them again. Go out and play. Go out and play. Can the floor play? The rabbit floor jumps around happily. Charles was speechless. It's all said and asked questions before you think about it. Yes, but I have to have a meeting with my students until tomorrow. I'm hungry, can I eat? Walrus Tusk asked. Another question that left Charles speechless. No problem, I'll have people bring the food in later. Otter Layla thought for a moment and asked, so you saved us, didn't you? Quote. Charles nodded. The problem is at least higher than the previous two levels. Obviously, you can live here. Finally, Charles sets his sights on Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon thought for a moment and asked the last question. Do you know the Supreme Evolution? This question is interesting. If Charles knows about Supreme Evolution but still saves them, it means that Charles is not afraid of Supreme Evolution. If Charles didn't know about Supreme Evolution, well, they need to escape the place as soon as possible. This is the wisdom of the Rocket Raccoon. Of course. This wisdom is actually not smart enough. If it were Tony Stark, the question he would ask would probably be, what's your name? What do you like to eat? Are you short of money? Can we be friends and so on? First pull in the relationship between the two, and then you can prostitute dozens of questions in vain. The wisdom of human beings in the world is still relatively far away from animals. I know about the supreme evolution, but I don't know him and I'm not interested in knowing him. Charles's answer reassured Rocket Raccoon. Because there's a lot of stuff in this answer. I know about supreme evolution. It shows that Charles understands the power of supreme evolution in the universe. But I don't know him. It means that the two haven't worked together in any way. Not interested in getting to know him, not liking supreme evolution, or even a little bit out of sight. Over the next few days, Charles took 4 young children to familiarize himself with Xavier's gifted junior school. Mutant children don't crowd them out. Because many children are alienated themselves. Compare people's hearts to their own, so mutant children treat them very kindly. During this time, Charles also took a rocket to Brooklyn. While going to see Jessica, he also bought a lot of gadgets for the 4 little ones. It is different from the quiet years of Xavier's Genius Junior School. Eagle Sauce announced a number of measures after S.H.I.E.L.D. Project Insight, seriously overturned. In the face of public opinion and media opinion, the Security Council has classified S.H.I.E.L.D., like Hydra, as a terrorist organization. S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury, Captain America Steve Rogers, Level 8 Agent Phil Coulson, Level 8 Agent Hand and others are all listed as wanted. As for the Avengers Natasha, Barton and others, they are no longer on the wanted list. That's what Tony works. In Eagle Sauce Capital is undoubtedly the most powerful force. The Avengers completely broke away from S.H.I.E.L.D. and became an independent organization. After the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. across the board, there is a gap in the institutions that respond to the world's security crisis. Neither the FBI nor the CIA is up to the task. After a brief period of chaos, the Disaster Control Agency, which specializes in alien technology, was given greater powers. In addition, the Heavenly Sword Bureau was created by Fury's old comrade in arms Maria Rambeau. Because after this incident, the Security Council feels that eggs should not be placed in one basket. Charles knew that the 100-legged worm was dead and not stiff, and that the real S.H.I.E.L.D. had not perished. Coulson led the Iron Riders Melinda, Rofiz, Janma Simmons, Barbara the Imitation Bird and others to go underground. As for where Fury went. After Insight Project, Fury went looking for the Skrulls. Fury and Captain Marvel Carol promised to find a new home for the Skrulls. But Fury the old Yin coin was resigned. He let the Skrullless live in hiding on Earth. When S.H.I.E.L.D. was in full swing, Fury didn't need the power of 2.8 crew. Now he wants to activate the Skrulls of Earth and make them his secret army. This thing after another has nothing to do with Charles. The only thing that has something to do with it is that the United Nations recognizes the sovereignty of the mutant independent kingdom and agrees to hand over Jimmy, a mutant child whose ability is to suppress X. The child was supposed to be handed over to Magneto, but was taken back to school by Charles. Because as far as he knows, Jimmy is the elixir of one of the mutant Saint 5. As long as the power of elixir is reflected in the treatment, it also has the ability to inhibit X causes. But the latter can only be counted as an add-on. What is really powerful is the healing power of the elixir against the sky. It can be said that as long as there is half a breath, he can be saved. More powerful than Charles's healing spell and fairy beans. If they find the Chi Saint 5, they can even directly resurrect mutants. All in all, Langdon Jimmy can't give Magneto Eric. Because Eric could possibly kill him. On the day Charles takes Jimmy back to school, a giant elemental crowd appears in Venice, Europe, and a superhero who calls himself Mysterio stops the elementals from destroying it. Mysterio has really appeared, and it looks like I'm going to Europe to stop him from revealing Gwen's identity. Charles looked at the news on TV and said. After determining the itinerary of Europe, Charles came directly to Venice with a phantom shift. Venice is known as a city on the water, but the city does not have cars, but there are 177 waterways crisscrossing, giving it a unique romantic character. Charles captured Gwen's location almost instantaneously. Gwen and Mysterio were drinking coffee together. Quote. At this time, in a cafe on the island of Burano in Venice, Gwen was sitting opposite Mysterio drinking coffee. Mysterio Quentin Baker claims to come from a parallel world. He is an expert in dealing with elemental crowds. While dealing with the elementals today, Quentin met Gwen, who has extraordinary abilities. Because he was out on a trip, Gwen didn't bring his iconic spider suit, so Quentin didn't know that Gwen was the ghost spider of New York. Miss Stacy, with your assistance, the odds of winning against the elemental crowd will undoubtedly increase greatly. Quentin said. Gwen put her hands on the coffee cup, hesitating in her heart, not knowing whether to say yes to Mysterio. In Mysterio's description, the elementals once destroyed a world. It's the world he was in. The strength of the elemental crowd will continue to grow in this world. To put it simply, the longer the elemental crowd stays in this world, the stronger it will be. Like Charles Stock 19 in Jupiter is a space Godzilla. The little one can constantly absorb cosmic rays, and the longer it takes, the bigger his body will be, and his strength will increase accordingly. So, to defeat the elemental crowds, you must do it as soon as possible, otherwise, they will become more and more tricky until they are completely unable to resist. At that time, this world will also be destroyed in the hands of the elemental people just like the world Quentin was before. Gwen was intimidated by the future Quentin described. She could work as a police officer in New York. Fight evil and uphold justice. But to protect the whole world. Gwen didn't think she could take on such a burden. That's too much responsibility. There are Avengers in this world, I think it would be better to find them to deal with the affairs of the elemental crowd. Gwen declined. Mysterio Quentin smiled sadly, with an expression of anger, regret and pain on his face. Do you think there are no Avengers in my world? After the elementals appeared, I turned to the Avengers for help, and I thought they could solve the crisis. But Iron Man Tony Stark, that megalomaniac screwed everything up. Quote. He wants to trap the elemental crowd and use the energy of the elemental crowd to achieve the clean energy of Eagle Sauce. Tony Stark, he's a capitalist through and through. I advised him not to do that, because humans can't harness the dangerous natural energy, but he insists on doing so. Stark's actions hastened the demise of my world, so I would never trust the Avengers of this world. Quote. Gwen took a sip of his coffee. Seriously, she didn't like Stark either. This time after S.H.I.E.L.D. Project Insight, Gwen has no reason not to believe Quentin's words. Because humans are always trying to master things they can't control. Trapping the elements is clean energy. That sounds like something Stark would do. If only Charles were here. Charles can certainly give himself a good piece of advice. Just as Gwen was thinking about this, she saw the outer door of the cafe open, and Charles, dressed in gray casual clothes, came in from outside. In this moment, she felt that she was not dreaming. Until Charles beckoned to her and gave her a smile. Gwen was sure she wasn't dreaming. It was a surprise. Charles came to Europe and gave himself a huge surprise. Hi, Charles. After getting up to say hello to Charles, Gwen remembered Mysterio Quentin. What to do? Charles wouldn't misunderstand her dating someone else. At this moment, Gwen panicked. The heart is full of Charles misunderstanding what to do himself. Forgetting that Quentin is a mysterious guest on TV. When you sit with Mysterio and drink coffee, you have already proved you're extraordinary from the side. I saw the attack of the Venetian elements, and I was afraid that you would fly here. The tour group said you were on Burano, so I came here to try my luck and didn't expect to find it. Quote. Charles walked over to this side and naturally sat down next to Gwen. After asking the waiter for a glass of macchiato, he began to look at Quentin Baker on the other side. This guy was originally an employee of Stark Industries. Because he was depressed, he left the group company with hatred for Stark. He uses a holographic technology to create the so-called elemental crowd in order to realize his much-anticipated superhero dream. The slander of Stark just now, that true feeling cannot be acted out without personal grudges. Charles couldn't help but wonder, did Stark sleep with his girlfriend? It's quite possible. Quote exclamation mark quote. Charles frowned slightly. What kind of mutant is this Quentin Baker? That's right. Charles, with a brainwave enhancer, can distinguish between humans and mutants from people around the world. When he is face to face, he can easily sense it. Quentin is a mutant. Charles, this is Quentin Baker, a painter. Yes, he is a painter. I wanted him to paint me a portrait, but Mr. Baker didn't have the time. Quote. Gwen introduced in a panic. Probably because of George's tutoring, Gwen rarely lies, which makes her unable to cope with the situation at hand. She was already nervous, too afraid to look at Charles. Because the pair of azure eyes like the sky will make her feel that her secrets have been seen through by Charles. Charles did not debunk Gwen's clumsy lie and said with a smile, "Since Mr. Baker does not have time, I think I can be your exclusive painter." Quote. Charles, can you still draw? Gwen was pleasantly surprised. Originally, the doctorate in biology and psychology was already very powerful, but I didn't expect Charles to draw. Miss Stacy can verify it herself, and there is no charge for a bad painting. Then you must not draw well. Anyway, I don't have the money to pay you. Gwen snorted twice. Every time I chat with Charles, I feel happy and unconsciously express the character of a little girl. Quentin was like being shoehorned into 2 mouthfuls of dog food. He felt like he was redundant. Miss Stacy, if nothing else, I'll go first. I'm really short on time, and I can't put off a lot of work. Quentin stood up and said, the second sentence meant something. Finally, before leaving, he took one more look at Charles. It's great to have a good skin. I, Quentin Baker, will soon be the world's most watched superhero. At that time, those stars, models, rich people, they can call and linger. Leaving the cafe, Quentin walked around a corner to make sure there was no one behind him. The next moment Quentin's figure disappeared, and he came to a bell tower. This is Quentin's mutant ability. It can allow him to teleport 630 movements within a diameter of 1 kilometer. That's not how much of a power it is. At least in the dangerous Marvel world, with such an ability, if there is no corresponding fighting skills, weapon skills, rounding is still a waste material. Because Quentin has this ability, he wants to be a superhero from a very young age. But being a superhero is too dangerous. Quentin is unwilling to pay for this dream, let alone take risks. Arriving at the clock tower, Quentin made a phone call. On the other side of the phone was a gloomy voice. Mr. Baker, I hope you can give me some good news. The voice was as cold as the cold wind blowing from hell. Quentin subconsciously shrunk his neck and said, Sorry, Your Excellency Blackheart Demon, I was almost successful, but her boyfriend appeared and disrupted my plan. Quote. But rest assured, it's a little girl, tomorrow, I will definitely succeed tomorrow. I've lost patience. The Blackheart Demon said furiously. You go and kill that person, and then blame the elemental people, think about it. Isn't a superpower who has lost his mind exactly what we need? Quote. Kill. Quentin heard that the Blackheart Demon let him kill and hesitated. He hasn't killed anyone yet. At least not killed with his own hands. Speaking of which, he is just an ordinary person, and someone who is cold asks him to kill, he does not dare to go at all. The black-hearted demon heard Quentin's retreat, and said coldly, Don't forget, for your stupid superhero dream, I let the wind demon and the water demon accompany you to play a house. Quote. If you dare to go against my will, I will announce all this, and you will not only be discredited, but you will spend your whole life in prison. Or when you are ruined, I will take your soul. The Blackheart Demon hits Quentin's weakness, fame and life, which are the things he values the most. Charles played with Gwen all afternoon, and by the way, he painted a portrait of Gwen with the Bridge of Sighs in the background, and the superb painter received a fragrant kiss from Gwen. Then Gwen put on a big red face. All the way back to the hotel, she still looked shy. It's evening. Charles sensed something entering his room. It was not Quentin who came, because after thinking about it, the Blackheart Demon felt that it was more appropriate to let the Wind Demon kill. Quentin is a waste and is likely to make things go bluntly bad. Of course. That guy wasn't for nothing either, at least he was gifted at playing with intrigue. Not human. Charles, who pretended to be asleep, couldn't help but wonder. Logically, Mysterio Quentin is a scrap material. In the original movie, Quentin uses the holographic system to create illusions, trick the spider, and get control of Stark's drone. But the biggest harm to the little spider is only to reveal Peter's identity. Mysterio in this beautiful manga world is not only a mutant. Can you still summon monsters? It's also powerful. What is Gwen doing to lie to my family? Gwen again without Stark's drone. Because of this curiosity, Charles decided to wait and see. Aren't you coming to kill me? No problem, as you wish. Charles uses the ability of telepathy to make the Wind Demon think that he killed himself. After success, a hurricane roared and it left the hotel. After a while, there was no time. Best Actor Mysterio Quentin approached Gwen, who bluntly positioned the elements to come to this hotel. When Charles's door was opened, Charles confused Quentin with telepathy. Quentin dances and tells Gwen about the evil deeds of the elements. Thinking that it was daytime, Gwen worked with him to stop the destruction of the elementals, causing the jealousy of the elementals. That's why the elementals kill Gwen's boyfriend, it's a bloody revenge. Charles, what's wrong with him? Gwen points to Mysterio, who seems to have lost his mind. Charles smiled and waved his right index finger, a little light moving with the fingertips. As you can see, this is the power of magic. Magic. Charles, are you a magician? Quote. Gwen was pleasantly surprised. It turned out that Charles, like himself, had extraordinary abilities. This is great. She had been afraid to tell Charles that she was a ghost spider. The main fear is that Charles will not be able to accept it. A superpowered person who was like an outlier in the crowd, she didn't even dare to tell her father George. However, if Charles is also a superpower, there is no problem. I guess so. Charles said. In addition to magic, he will have a lot of things. Gwen thought Charles would have fewer spells, which is why he said so. But what does it matter? The important thing is that Charles can definitely accept superpowers. At this time, Mysterio Quentin was still in the spiritual world that Charles had created for him, and he was still chattering about his opinions. Gwen felt that it was still important, so she told Charles about the identity of Mysterio. Charles said, "This man has been deceiving you, I just knew he was lying to you, that's why I came to Venice." Quote. But I don't know what his conspiracy is, and I think it can be calculated. Gwen was suddenly startled. Wait, Charles said that he knew that Mysterio was lying to himself, and said that he would calculate it. Charles, do you know I'm a ghost spider? Looking at Charles's expression, Gwen understood. And then she was not happy. Think of yourself chatting with Charles as a ghost spider while using Gwen's identity. She also said that the ghost spider was her best friend. This is very good to die. It's embarrassing to use her toes to pick out the 3 rooms and 1 hall. How will she see Charles in the future? As for Charles, who has always known, he still pretends not to know. Gwen didn't feel unhappy because of this. Because he went too far than Charles. Leaving the hotel, Gwen followed Mysterio Quentin on a ferry from Venice to a port on the European coast. Gwen kept a cold face the whole time. Because she knows that Charles is okay, and she has to pretend that her boyfriend was killed by the elementals. It's too hard for a child who can't even lie. So, just keep a cold face, and there will always be nothing wrong with it. Elemental crowds are collections of elements, and when they want to be hidden, they are difficult to locate. Quentin said. The stories he has always made up have holes. Quentin also understands this, which is why he is reluctant to go to the Avengers. In the face of that group of shrewd guys, he could not guarantee that his lies would not be discovered. It is possible that it will be recognized soon. As for a little girl like Gwen, Quentin felt that he was casual. So how to find them? Gwen asked coldly. Quentin said, they have found an agent in this world, and the elemental crowd can hide, but the agent can't do it. Quote. If we catch the agent, we can force out the elemental crowd. So instead of hitting the elemental crowd, I hit the agent instead. Gwen slandered in her heart. Now that he knew that Quentin was deceiving himself, Gwen didn't even believe a single punctuation mark he said. There was no good face for Quentin either. Of course. In the current situation, it is completely normal for Gwen not to have a good face. Quentin finished what he had to say, and then shut up in amusement. Soon they came to a small town near the city of Padua. Padua is the closest city to Venice, a town right between Venice and Padua. The town is sparsely populated and very desolate. Because in the village not far away, it is said that countless evil spirits are sealed, and even the town is deeply affected, and unnatural horrors often occur. With the exception of a few elderly people, the young people have largely moved out of the town. Charles followed Gwen with telepathy, and if he found that it was wrong, he could instantly stand beside Gwen with phantom transfiguration, or the ability to move at the speed of light. It's all a village of demons, what is the plot? Charles muttered in his heart, but he still didn't brow for a while. The amount of movie viewing in his previous life was not particularly huge. At this time, there is no impression in the mind, which is completely understandable. Maybe it's not the plot of an American drama or a movie. A butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon rainforest threatens to cause a tornado in Texas. This is the butterfly effect. Since crossing over, Charles has seen many butterfly effect events. Mysterio Quentin follows the instructions of the Black Heart and takes Gwen to a road that is almost desolate. This road leads to the village that seals countless evil spirits. The agents of the elementals in this world will come soon. I need to prepare, we need to destroy the elemental crowds with the help of cosmic energy. After Quentin finished speaking, the figure disappeared from Gwen's side, as if it had never appeared. Isn't it fragrant to be a magician who has the ability to be a big changeable living person? Why do you have to be a superhero? Charles complained in his heart. Showing in front of people is what Mysterio is best suited to do. At this moment, a flaming Harley motorcycle roared at 500 miles per hour, and the roar of the motor was like a roar of fury. It was a skeleton man wearing a leather jacket that looked like a hippie and a chain of flame wrapped around his body. In fact, his whole person, as well as his motorcycle, was burning with flames. It's like a night from hell. Ghost Knight. Charles suddenly reacted. Ghost Knight Johnny Blazer. He made a pact with Mephitos, the Lord of Hell, to become Mephitos' agent on Earth and help Mephitos harvest evil spirits on Earth. The moment the Ghost Knight appeared, Charles finally understood the cause and effect. The guy who ran to the hotel in the middle of the night to kill himself should be the Wind Demon. Wind Demon, Earth Devil and Water Devil are all younger brothers found by the Black Heart Demon. And the Black Heart Demon is the son of Mephitos, who came to Earth from Hell to find a way to defeat his father Mephitos. That way is a contract sealed in the village of San Venganza. Covenant of San Venganza. Mephitos had lent his power to the villagers of San Venganza and signed a contract. The villagers who gained their strength all degenerated into terrible demons. That's more than 1,000 incomparably dark and evil spirits. If Mephitos gets those souls, he will become stronger than ever, and the hellish dimension will devour the reality dimension. I don't know for what reason, it may be threatened by the ancient big guy, or Odin. Mephitos did not take the deed of San Venganza. After the Black Heart came to Earth, he wanted to get involved in the contract of Saint Venganza. So, Mephitos asked his evil spirit knight to stop his son Black-Hearted Demon. The Black-Hearted Demon feels that he is not reckless than Daddy's ace beater. So he and Quentin are in cahoots. The two use the script of the elemental crowd to destroy the world, each taking what they need. Quentin asked the three devils to accompany him to act. The Black Heart Demon used this incident to find the superhero of the human world and let the superhero stop the Ghost Rider. He can take advantage of the gap when the evil spirit knight is entangled and absorb more than 1,000 evil spirits in the contract of Saint Venganza. He didn't need Quentin to tell himself, look at the blazing knight on the road. Gwen thought that was the person Quentin had tricked himself into dealing with. However, it doesn't look like a good person. Gwen felt she should ask first. What Charles said. Misunderstandings between people all start with a lack of communication. So Gwen shot out the spider silk and swung it at Johnny, the evil spirit knight. Hi hello, can I ask what you are? Roar. Responding to Gwen was a shotgun bullet. Gwen was taken aback, but she was too late to dodge in midair. The next moment, Charles stood in front of Gwen. Bang! The bullet hits him, and energy absorption directly absorbs the kinetic energy of the bullet, including the burning of the hell flames of the earth Monaco. It's not a good habit to shoot without saying a word. Charles clenched his fists and smashed on the front face of the hell motorcycle, and the huge inertia made the motorcycle fly out, and Johnny was also thrown from above. He fell hundreds of meters on the road and then got up unharmed. I saw him untie the chains on his body and shake them, walking towards Charles step by step, leaving footprints of burning flames on the ground. Charles rubbed his temples with his fingers, forgetting if this thing could speak in the form of the Ghost Knight. Anyway, it's quite difficult to communicate. I saw the chain flicking towards him, and Gwen let out an exclamation in the distance. Charles raised his hand to grab the chain, pulled it hard, and then the Hulk's signature move smashed the evil spirit knight. There were several broken ribs on his body, and all his teeth were lost, leaving only a few firm, standing, on the jawbone. However, as long as Mephitos' power is still in the Ghost Rider. Such physical damage would make it difficult to inflict fatal damage on him. Where Charles interrupted, the burning hell flame became even stronger, and within the flames, new bones sprouted again. It seems that only magic can defeat magic. How about trying the Avadaso spell? Charles raised his finger, and a green glow lingered on his fingertips. Suddenly, the air next to it produced a ripple. An old gentleman, strangely appeared on the dark road. Mr. Xavier, your world is under threat, and we should point the finger at the real danger, shouldn't we? The old gentleman had an elegant demeanor and a gentle tone. Charles felt a change in the flow of time around him. Obviously, the Black Heart Demon was about to get the St. Van Gonza contract, and the situation was quite urgent. Otherwise, Mephitos would not be on Earth, using this ability to change the rules, which is very consuming to him. If it was in his hellish dimension, Mephitos was a godlike being. With a wave of your hand, it's no problem to slow down time by hundreds of times, thousands of times. But on Earth, Mephitos can't. The laws of the two worlds are not the same. Here Mephitos can only use a small part of his power, even inferior to his son Blackheart Demon. The same goes for Dormammu. That's why Dormammu devours the earth with dark latitudes. Your Excellency Mephitos, it is enough to have your knights against real dangers. Charles laughed. The old gentleman's smile froze on his face. Do you know who I am? As you know, I am the principal of a school, and I will inevitably know a little more. The corner of Mephitos's mouth twitched. His existence is not necessarily known to S.H.I.E.L.D. Should a school principal know? Of course. Now was not the time to entangle with this. He couldn't let the Black Heart Demon get the St. Van Gonza contract. That contract was his greatest masterpiece. If the Black Heart Demon gains the power of the St. Van Gonza contract, he may actually lose to the Black Heart Demon. At that time, the Black Heart Demon will become the new master of the Hell Dimension. He will lose his power and boundless might. Mr. Xavier, if you know my identity, you should understand the seriousness of what I am talking about. My son Black Heart Demon is trying to rebel against me. If he gets the St. Van Gonza contract, not only will I be finished, but this world will also be eroded by the Hell Dimension. My knight is not enough to win the Black Heart Devil, so I need your help. It's not all a request. Don't forget that you have stolen my 480's power many times. Mephitos said in a stern tone. The magic of the Avadaso curse was borrowed from Mephitos. Charles knew that Mephitos was a stingy. Oh my god, he had only used the Avadaso curse a few times, and he remembered it clearly. If this were to be replaced by Crimson Dimension Demon God Starak, he would definitely not remember it. But Charles never intended to pay it back. I borrowed it by skill, why should I pay you back? If before, Charles would still be afraid of Mephitos. After all, he belongs to the old dimensional master. On Earth, Mephitos does not exert particularly strong power. However, he can create monsters in the Hell Dimension and let his servants, subordinates, and juniors deal with him. You can concoct conspiracies one after another and secretly calculate yourself. As for the little power consumed, it was negligible for Mephitos, who was sitting in the depths of the Hell Dimension. Charles, who now has the Silver Super template, is not afraid of Mephitos. Dare to provoke himself, he will go to the Hell Dimension to cause destruction. Mephitos in the Hellish Dimension is only at the level of a single universe. Myself and him 5 are 5. In the face of a person who can directly hit his lair, I believe that Mephitos will judge the situation and make the right choice. If your knights can't win your son, you can find a few more knights to solve the problem. If you continue to waste time with me here, I think the Black Heart Demon will soon finish absorbing the St. Van Gonza contract, and maybe he will forgive my debts. Charles said. Mephitos was furious. Aren't you afraid that this world will be eroded by the Hell Dimension and become a purgatory on Earth? Don't be afraid, it's a big deal. I'll go live on an alien planet, right? Mephitos was really blown up. With a wave of his hand, he undid the change in the speed of time flow. Then he disappeared in place with the evil spirit rider Johnny, apparently rushing directly to San Van Gonza, saving some time with the little strength he had left. Gwen came from the side. After the appearance of the old gentlemanly Mephitos, because the speed of time flow changes. Gwen walked towards Charles in just a few seconds. In these seconds, Charles has completed a series of conversations with Mephitos. In Gwen's eyes, it is The old gentleman Mephitos appears, and soon he leaves with the ghost knight again. Charles, who is that person and what did you say? By the way, he hit you with a shotgun, were you injured? Gwen asked like a curious baby. Charles did not hide Morphitos' identity, including what Morphitos said to him. Gwen had fear on her face. Hell dimension. Then if we don't help him, will the Blackheart demon really gain the power of the Saint Van Gonza contract, and then the hell dimension will erode the world? Quote. Charles smiled and scratched Gwen's nose and said, drive Charles's first lesson, never negotiate a deal with a demon. Quote. Charles's intimate action made Gwen snort, and at the same time flicked him a very amorous white eye. Charles gestured and put his hand on Gwen's slender and weak waist. There is a good show in San Van Gonza, I'll show you it. With that, Phantom Transfiguration is launched. The next moment, the two flashed out from the high slope near San Van Gonza. Gwen was a little uncomfortable with such a sudden movement. After a while, she noticed that Charles's hand was still on her waist, and she reminded her shyly. Who thought that Charles not only did not withdraw his hand, but hugged him fiercely. San Van Gonza is a very run-down village with a Renaissance look everywhere. Since I don't know how many years ago, Mephitos seduced the villagers here, causing them to degenerate into the most evil spirits. The village was no longer inhabited. The church in the middle of San Van Gonza is the best preserved building. The Covenant of Saint Van Gonza is placed in the shrine of the church. At this moment, the black-hearted demon got the Saint Van Gonza contract, and when he read the words on the contract, a boundless black cloud shrouded the sky above Saint Van Gonza. At the same time, one after another hideous ghosts flew out from the contract. The ghosts in the sky CBDC roamed, letting out a mournful howl, as if venting the unwillingness and anger of being sealed. The black heart demon opened his arms, and countless demons began to fly into his body. These demons are the purest, evil spirits, and they are the masterpieces of Mephitos. Every evil soul can quickly increase the power of the black heart demon. The black heart demon was intoxicated with the thrill of this strength increase. Mephitos, my stupid father, would actually allow such a powerful force to remain in the world. Black heart demon thought in his heart. When the black heart demon improves its strength, the wind demon, water devil, and earth devil stand by and act as bodyguards. At the same time, look at these powerful evil spirits and salivate. The creatures of the hell dimension have the same way to improve their strength, that is, directly devouring powerful and evil souls. These souls are a great tonic for them. However, the three demons did not dare to encroach on the power belonging to the black-hearted devil. That would kill them. Bang! Suddenly, a bullet burning the flames of hell hits the wind demon's brain. The latter screamed and turned into countless scattered wind whirls. Finally, these wind cyclones converged and turned back into the appearance of wind demons. But the wind demon's body is not as solidified as it was at the beginning. There are faint signs of collapse. The bullets of the ghost knight caused him a lot of damage. The wind demon looked venomously at the evil spirit knight who was coming towards the church. Or the hell motorcycle that roared furiously, and behind the motorcycle, a string of flame wheel prints was left. Ghost Rider Johnny rides on a motorcycle with a shotgun in his hand, and he is about to continue shooting. Suddenly, a dirt and rock bulge appeared on the ground, and the hell motorcycle crashed into it, and with a bang, the evil spirit rider Johnny himself was thrown to the ground again. As a motorcycle stuntman, his car skills are really not good. Charles, can he beat the Black Heart demon? Even Gwen expressed doubts, feeling that the evil spirit knight who looked fierce and evil could not even pass the level of the three demons. Charles snapped his fingers. Behind the two appeared a sofa, and in front of them there was a small table with drinks and snacks. At the same time, there is a light and shadow that looks like a screen. Sit down in time to see the scene inside San Van Gonza. Gwen was simply stunned. Is this magic? Love, love, love. After Charles sat down, he said, don't underestimate Mephitos. Although the evil spirit knight does not look very flexible, he can obtain endless power from Mephitos, the lord of the hell dimension. Quote. His strength depends on whether Mephitos is willing to lend him or not. Gwen seems to understand. She picked up a bottle of drink from the small table and took a few sips. As Charles said, inside Street Van Gonza, the evil spirit knight who got up from the ground seemed to be unharmed. He constantly shoots at the Earth Devil, and the bullets that burn the hell flame make the Earth Demon extremely painful. In the end, the Earth Demon screamed and exploded. The Ghost Knight continued to advance towards the church, and he stepped into a small puddle, which made him stunned. Because as far as he knows, it hasn't been raining in Padua recently. So how can there be puddles? Moreover, a little puddle, the flame on his own feet can vaporize it instantly. Before he had time to think about it, the evil spirit knight was suddenly dragged into a puddle by a force. This is the ability of water devils. It looks like a small puddle, but inside it looks like a deep ocean. The water demon emerges from it and wants to drown the Ghost Rider in the water. Mephitos, who had returned to the hell dimension and was sitting on the throne forged by countless evil spirits, sensed the crisis of the evil spirit knight and snorted coldly. He was extremely reluctant to lend the power of the Eye of Judgment to the evil spirit knight. This is a powerful ability. A soul that can judge guilt by the look in his eyes. Hellfire can burn the other party's soul in an instant. The more evil the spirit, the more restrained by the Eye of Judgment. This is Mephitos's powerful ability, and it also restrains Mephitos himself. If not, the situation is too bad. Mephitos would not have allowed the Ghost Rider to master this dangerous ability. Charles Xavier, a human who steals the power of hell, when the Black Heart demon is cleaned up, I will let you understand how terrible the wrath of the King of Hell should be. Mephitos roared, and in this boundless space, countless evil spirits trembled. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.